In a world where voices are silenced,
Please.
one man refuses to lie down.
It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
He's been punted not once,
40 years they've been trying.
not twice,
You couldn't fire somebody if they were horrible, doing a terrible job.
but 3 times.
You're fired.
He doesn't tell you what to think, but gives you something to think about. Welcome to the Bonafide podcast with Luke Bona. And he's not
Here we go.
done
Hold your ears, folks.
yet.
It's showtime.
Well, g'day, hello, and welcome to all of you, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between. Can't forget the people in between. Welcome to another Bonafide podcast. Really looking forward to bringing this one to you today. It is episode 121, and the millennial is with me. We have a massive show today. Something for everyone, Kelsey.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for your input. We've got some really good guests. I'm going to tell you who they are in just a second. But look, a reminder, please jump on board. Please subscribe. Please spread the word, because every ounce of participation helps us find new audiences. And look, leave voice messages. Leave us emails. The telephone number is 0291289311. Luke Bona Radio Guy at gmail.
Wrong. We have a new email address for people.
Well, you didn't tell me. I didn't get the email.
It's quite literally written on the run sheet right here. You've gotten so good at doing your introduction that I just had to switch it up on you.
Community
Keep you on
at
your toes.
bonafidepod.com.
Yes.
What
Now
is that?
Say it again.
Community at bonafidepod.com. Why do we have a new address? What's happened?
Just so it's easier for people to remember.
How are they going to remember community at bonafidepod.com?
You forget Luke Bona Radio Guy at gmail.com. You always think it's Luke Bona, that radio guy at gmail, which is so long and incorrect. So I thought, let's just make it easy. Community at bonafidepod.com. Send your opinions, your thoughts, whatever you want Luke to know. We'll get
Why
it
do
there.
we have to have community there? Why not just bonafidepod.com?
Luke, that's not how email addresses work.
So you got to have the word community at the front.
Yes.
Community at bonafidepod.com. Speaking of new audiences, since our chat with Pauline Hanson, we have kept climbing 128,000 views, and we're counting. That's more than Carl Stefanovic's got in his podcast.
No, it's not, bro. You can dream, but no.
By the way, he's not on radio on ARN. Got the punt.
Yeah, I saw that.
Twice. 2 punts in 1 week. I'm going to talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit later on. You know, Rob McKnight, and we share content with Rob. Very interesting chat with Rob McKnight today about the future of podcasting, free-to-air television, mad effing witches, and a few other things. Rob had a fantastic guest on his podcast last night. Do you know who we had?
Who?
Daryl Summers. Now, recently there was a big list of Australia's top 100 television shows, and Hey Hey It's Saturday was left off the list. What? How could Hey Hey be left off the list? That show, that iconic television show, has been left off the top 100 TV shows of all time. Rob McKnight will explain it, how the list came about, how it was compiled. But what a get. Rob got Daryl, and we're going to play a little bit of Daryl on Rob's show a little bit later on. Fascinating stuff. Did you ever get into Hey Hey?
No, that's way before my time.
It got taken off telly, and they thought it had had its run. Then they brought it back, a rejigged Hey Hey. And do you remember when your sister had the American foreign exchange students from Chicago out here?
Yeah.
And we said, you got to watch this show. It's been off for a while, but they've brought it back on. It's absolutely iconic. All of Australia talks about it. And so they watched it. Not a smile. They didn't get it.
I've never seen it. I don't know.
No, it didn't make an impact. Made an impact on me, though. Anyway, I'm looking forward to that chat. We're going to talk motoring with James Ward from drive.com.au. What about Will Shackle? Will Shackle is a young man. He's in his second year at ANU. I first met Will when he was 15, 16. He is so passionate about Australia going nuclear. And he, in fact, founded Nuclear for Australia. And he's in Vienna at a nuclear conference. He's a guest speaker at the age of 20.
Yeah, talk about overachieving.
He is a massive overachiever. You remember we spoke to the young 17-year-old farmer from Wodonga?
Yeah.
Well, this is another young achiever. Whether you agree with him or not, have a listen to what he has to say, Will Shackle. And we will also have the Man Cave with the Vice Captain, Adam McDonald, Kelsey, do we have a special guest today? We talk about interesting onions that we can unpeel. I wonder how many people know Pat Conaghan. Pat is the local member for Cowper. Pat's with the National Party. In fact, it was David Littleproud who said, listen, you got to talk to this bloke. He's done a lot of things in his life before he got into politics. He's been a lawyer, he's been a prosecutor, he's been a defence lawyer, but he was, for a few years, an undercover police officer where he got inside and infiltrated gangs, bikies, drug dealers, lived in their world in order to bring about a prosecution. And Kelsey, some of his stories are going to blow your mind. I'm really looking forward to this fascinating chat. You won't be able to stop watching. Your jaw's going to be on the ground. I guarantee it. Pat Conaghan, member for Cowper, and what it's like to go undercover.
Something to think about, something to laugh about. We're talking.
As at the beginning of this month, a stack of changes have landed. The bottom tax rate drops from 16% to 15% on incomes between $18,201 and $45,000. The no receipt work expense deduction jumps to $1,000. Paid parental leave stretches from 120 to 130 days. Remember, Pauline Hanson said she doesn't believe there should be parental leave. Why should you get paid if you're not working? Remember that?
Yeah.
Interesting to note this week, her popularity just dropped off a little bit since her speech at the National Press Gallery in Canberra. And that was one of her policies. No parental leave. Why should you get paid if you're not working? Anyway, so that's just one of the changes. Big changes. You've really got to go to your accountant, haven't you, to make sure that everything you do is above board. I wonder how the accountants keep up with it, Kelsey, when there's always so many tax changes.
Well, that's their job, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So it's tax time, and good luck with coming to grips with all of that. I'll tell you a story that I covered on the Bona Report on 2GB this morning, Kelsey, and I want to get your opinion on this. You know how crime involving e-bikes is just taking over everywhere? Well, in Brisbane, they have passed legislation to get really, really tough. Now, a lot of this legislation in many states, including New South Wales, was already in place. They want to be able to identify electric bikes, electric vehicles, not vehicles, EBs, e-bikes, limit the power, limit the age, new road rules involving people on e-bikes. But listen to this. If a law is broken by someone underage on an e-bike, they want parents to be more accountable for their children's behaviour. What do you make of that? Should parents cop fines and be more responsible for their children's behaviour? And if so, up to what age? What do you make of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're going to buy your child what can quite literally be a weapon, then as a parent, you have to be sure that your child is responsible enough to handle a weapon.
Yeah.
Even when they're out of your sight, right? You're still a parent. So
I'll give you a simpler solution. Don't buy them a bike.
that's exactly what I just said.
But don't buy them. No, just don't. Make them get a job, a paper run, lawn mowing,
Absolutely.
baby, and make them save every cent for a $3,000 bike.
100%.
Because see, we're talking consequences. If there's no consequences, you can't change behaviour. If their hard-earned, precious $3,000 motorbike, and that's what they are, if it was taken away from them, crushed, destroyed, sold, you watch. They'll become compliant. But you've got to have a number plate in the back so we know who's doing what, Kelsey.
I am with you. I wouldn't buy one for my kid. I'd make them save up. But that actually made me think, Luke, what do you do if you're the parent of a child who's a bully? That must be one of the hardest things to deal with.
I wonder how many parents have bullies for kids and they refuse to believe it. Not my little Johnny. No, not little Julie. No, I don't believe it. That's not in their nature. How many parents go down that track?
I remember so clearly. Would have been in year 7. Me and this girl always had this weird feud since like primary school, right? We went to the same high school. We were both just like not very nice to each other. We young kids, you just say stupid things. And I remember she called me something. I can't remember what it was. And I turned around and I said, well, you're a basketball head, because she had red hair as well. It was parent-teacher conferences. Like, a couple of weeks later, and I was sick when it was parent-teacher conferences. Like at high school, you could go in with your parents as they spoke to your teachers, but I was sick, so I didn't go. Mum still went, and I remember so clearly Mum coming home and ripping into me. So clearly she's told like her mum, and her mum said something to a teacher, and a teacher. I was absolutely on my best behaviours. I was so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed to be called out by Mum. Being called a bully absolutely destroyed my soul.
I shouldn't tell you this, but I'm going to tell you a story about your mum.
Was she a bully?
You know our friend Julie, Banana?
Yeah.
She was in the original movie
Puberty Blues.
Puberty Blues, and she played Kim. Look up the cast of Puberty Blues and you'll see her name. No, she was a dancer. Do you know what your mum did to Banana?
No, what?
Held her head by the hair in a toilet and flushed it.
Oh, so rude.
Didn't you know that?
I feel like I have heard that before.
And
but
Julie brings it up every time we see her.
that's so of the time.
Now, Jonathan Kearsley will join us a bit later here on the Bonafide podcast. He is the Sky News Washington bureau chief. What do you make of Donald Trump making up to $1.4 billion in cash, in money, last year from business dealings, dealing with cryptocurrency? And one of the companies is actually set up and run by his kids. Do you have a problem with a prime minister or a president earning that much income while they're president, or do you think it leaves the door open for nepotism and maybe corruption? Could those investments, or could the running of a business, the integrity of that be compromised by someone who's in great power?
Well, Luke, let me just say this. The people that have invested in these Trump-themed cryptos, they've lost $2.28 billion.
Wow.
Somebody did the math on this. If you had invested $10,000 in Trump coin when it first launched, it would be worth $415 today.
Wow. Really?
It's bad. He's made like $500 million or something off it. If you invested $1 million in the Melania crypto when it first launched, you would have $8,000 today.
Oh, wow.
If this is not the most blatant form of scamming, I just don't see how people can't see that.
Okay, let's put it out there. Should presidents, prime ministers, leaders of countries be allowed to invest in these things when they have an enormous position of power and influence? And what about all those people that did their money?
I know.
Oh, my God. The other thing that Jonathan Kearsley, we're going to talk about is the World Cup. And I know we touched on it last podcast, but we'll have another quick listen. This is the Aussie chant that's taken the world by storm. We're Aussies. We're on a bender. Donald Trump is a
offender.
Well, he is so upset by it. According to reports, Donald Trump does not attend football matches, and they're hosting the World Cup over there. He doesn't attend matches where there are English-speaking countries because the crowd has copied the Australian chant and they're all doing it.
Yeah, of course.
Very, very sad news to do with the World Cup in New Mexico. 4 people so far, the county at the dropping of today's podcast, have died in a crowd crush.
What?
Yeah. Have you not seen this story? It's very,
No, I haven't.
very, very sad.
Crowd crushes, I reckon that's going to be on the top of terrible ways to die.
It's happened before in big stadiums. I think 4 at this point people have died. 1 man, 44, 2 women, aged 19, 148, died from asphyxiation. And the authorities said crowds were celebrating the Mexican team's victory over Ecuador. At least 3 people died during World Cup celebrations in Mexico after thousands of soccer fans filled the streets to celebrate their national team's victory. It is just horrific, isn't it?
It's terrible. It's tragic.
It really, really is. So our thoughts go out to those people who and the family who have suffered in all of that. But let's hope that Australia does okay against Egypt. And that's Saturday at 4 a.m. I'll be up.
I don't know if I'll be. I don't know if I'll make it.
Go to halftime. Get up at halftime.
No one speak to me before 8 a.m. on Saturday because I will watch it when I get up. And no, Luke, if you text me the result, I will I will.
Yeah,
you're dead
you'll call
to
me basketball head.
You're dead to me. I will. You are a basketball head, actually. But Luke, this is also kind of a bit sad. I'm not sure if you saw this. It was spectacular visuals, although pretty bloody scary. A semi-trailer slammed into 4 parked trucks in a Hume Highway rest bay at Breadalbane on Tuesday.
Breadalbane. It's pronounced Breadalbane, yeah.
Breadalbane on Tuesday.
Everyone says that.
Yeah, sparking a fire. 1 truck was carrying 8 tons of butane cans, setting off repeated small explosions as fire crews arrived. All 6 drivers survived with only minor injuries. New South Wales Police called it nothing short of a miracle. And geez,
The visuals were
flames
amazing.
that came out of this were incredible. The aftermath of this, the trucks are absolutely, they've been burnt to like
A crisp.
a crisp. There's one truck here. Let me just show you this visual, Luke. This truck on the side here, the only thing that's left of it is the bloody bull bar.
That's unbelievable.
That is crazy.
Look at this, folks. Wow.
Oh my gosh, dangerous goods driving would be scary.
When are we
Scary.
When are we talking to Rod Hannafy again?
When you get back from,
Where I'm going.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm going away for a few days to see my boy. We'll talk to Rod Hannafy about that and truck safety in carrying flammable goods. God. To all the tanker wankers out there, we salute you. Please take care.
Yes.
Be very, very. Rod Hannafy was a tanker wanker for a long time, and he's got an interesting story to tell you about safety on a fuel tanker. Keep that one up your sleeve. and
Surely that would be heavily regulated.
Do you know what's more dangerous? When they're empty. Yeah, you put a flame to it. Like, imagine holding up a flame to a tanker. If it's empty, it's more flammable than when it's full. I think that's
Is it gases?
yeah. But anyway, I wouldn't be a courier of flammable liquids for all the money. So they say it's got to be done. So we think of you. We think of you. It's time for some listener mail. What do you got?
We got this email from Casey. This is what they say. They say, "Hi Luke, big fan of the night shift and have listened to your podcast when I have time. You once mentioned my cattle dog Alice on one of your podcasts. Was that the dog that was out of the bloody, the side of the truck?
Was it the Kelpie in the box? The red box on the bottom of the truck?
Yeah.
Was that Alice?
Maybe. I can't think of another cattle dog.
Yeah,
we've
okay.
spoken about. It must be. I hope it is because I still think that is one of the coolest photos.
Can you put it up again? Just show it now.
Yeah. It was shot by Truck Spotting Ararat. They are a fantastic photographer, truck spotting photographer. But my favourite photo today, I'll continue. They say, "My name is Casey. I'm from Perth. And today I woke up finding out the government are reviewing the PBS on MS medication. I have MS, diagnosed 2.5 years ago, and I rely on my monthly injection to help stop any progression on this disease. Without the PBS, this one-time use injection will cost MS patients approximately $2,330
$30
per month. On the PBS, it costs approximately $25 per month, so that is a massive jump. The treatment they are not reviewing isn't suitable to some MS patients like myself, as it can give us brain infections due to having a dormant virus residing in the kidneys. I guess if it's possible, please are you able to make your listeners aware? It's something I feel needs to be brought to attention. I have a busy life, 2 teenagers, 2 dogs, and work 4 days a week, and I can't have another MS flare and be possibly disabled because they want to cut medication off the PBS.
Okay.
That's tragic."
It is indeed. I'll tell you what we'll do. Just keep that email to one side. I'm going to follow that up, okay? Thank you very much, Casey. Really appreciate it. And give our love to Alice. Casey, give us an updated photo of Alice. Is it Alice that was in the red dog box under the truck, or is it another dog that we're thinking
It
of?
might be another dog.
I think it is.
It might be. I'm sure the name is ringing.
Oh, was it the time we did the competition on Name the Dog?
Oh, yes. I'm pretty sure. No, this was someone different. And I did get a message. Was it Gary?
Oh, come on.
But either way, we got the dog wrong.
I'm going to put it out there even further, cast a wider net if I can. If you receive life-saving medication or medication that does change your life forever, how much do you pay? Is it on the PBS? What medication are you on, and how much does it cost you a month? I want to know. We should keep a track of this. Now, we've got an email from Sean.
We got a voicemail here from Roscoe.
Yeah, Kels, Roscoe. Hey, talk about NHVR, mate. I want to talk about those safety management systems that'll be coming in. That wasn't publicised too well. I put the word around here. I said, "You got your safety health and management system up and running?" What? What are you talking about? So, yeah, once again, stuff up from me. See you, mate.
I love Roscoe. He's so good.
We'll have to save that and put that to one side for Rod Hannafy as well. Get his feedback on that, Kels.
We shall. Now, we got this email from Sean. Now, Sean's on the south Coast, and he's following up on a Truckee Tuesday chat about subbies, and it proves this issue goes way beyond trucking. Now, remember, we also heard somebody from the cleaning industry that was saying that it's a big problem there. So they write, my son Ben just finished his plastering apprenticeship. He even won Apprentice of the Year up in Canberra. Congratulations.
Yay.
But the very week he got his trade qualifications, his boss told him to get an ABM because he was becoming a subcontractor.
Right.
He went from getting holiday pay and sick leave to getting absolutely zero entitlements. If there's no work on, Ben doesn't get paid. On top of that, he has to run his own ute and maintain all of his own tools, and he's only getting charged out at about $40 an hour. Last financial year, he turned over just $60,000. I told him I was charging $35 an hour 26 years ago. Today, a subby needs to be making at least $80 an hour just to cover the costs and survive. Now his boss has taken on 2 new apprentices and seems to be trying to squeeze Ben out. It's time for him to quote his own work or sub out to other builders.
100%.
They finish up by saying, I know your segment was about truckies, Luke, but this underpaying and pushing people onto ABNs is happening across the board. Wow. So
100%. And you know,
huge issue.
And you know when Jacob worked for that bloke,
Yeah.
and he put him on as a subcontractor, so he wasn't responsible for his super, for his holiday pay, his sick pay and all of that. I said to Jacob then, this guy's been very good. He's taught you a great skill, but he had a lot of private clients that he could have seen. He should have gone out on his own then, because he would have earned a lot more. I know. And so this guy here in this email, this boy is being squeezed out. He's got on 2 apprentices, which he has to pay virtually nothing for.
Nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wrong.
But then it's like, do they not care about the quality of the work?
It's wrong. You've got someone, now they're at the stage where they get proper wages, put them on as a subcontractor, don't pay any of their entitlements. Oh, and we'll put on another apprentice.
What do you do? What do you do? All right, Luke, we got another voicemail here.
Okay.
G'day, Luke. It's Robbo, the truck driver, mate. Just want to put a question out to everyone out there is, on the Hume Highway, and it just seems to be in the last, 6 months, we've had a lot of serious incidents with truck accidents and silly little people and driving around with no lights. I remember coming up the highway that you'd always see a double bubble or NHVR, or in those days, Vic Roads or RTA, doing the mobile thing. But it seems to be these days they don't do any mobile, especially the Hume Highway. And I'm just sort of starting to think that they're just sort of focusing on the weighbridges all the time, and I'd like to actually put it out there to sort of put a question, is that the old saying, when you see a copper on the street, there's less crime around it. I'm starting to think that maybe the NHVR need to start doing some mobiles, because, geez, in the last few weeks, I've seen trucks driving around with no trailer lights, people doing stupid things and driving into rest bays at high speed and being ridiculous, like they think they're Formula One drivers, some of these young pups. So I'd just like to put it out there to sort of see what people are thinking, but I think the boys need to start doing a bit of patrolling and sort of start picking up some of these muppets.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Can you save that? And let's let Rod Hannafy hear that next time as well. I'd love to hear Rod's feedback.
Isn't it interesting, though, Luke, that, Belinda Hughes was on Truckee Tuesday.
How good was she?
Yeah, on Tuesday. And isn't it interesting that truckies are getting fined for clerical errors, right, on their logbooks? And ridiculous fines as well. But then clearly truckies doing the wrong thing, like very clearly doing the wrong thing, like speeding into truck bays, driving without headlights on, it has become so frequent that, people picking up on it and contacting people like us about it. So clearly the balance of power and monitoring it's out of whack here.
It really is. Yeah, Belinda Hughes from Hughes Lawyers, she's there to look after truckies. She used to be a prosecutor with NHVR. Now she defends truckies and does it brilliantly. Look up Hughes Lawyers. We're going to save that feedback for Rod Hannafy. I want to get his feedback on it too, Kels.
Yeah. All right. Last one, Luke. We got a voicemail here from Gary.
Gaza? Not Gaza. Gaza.
Hey, love the podcast with Senator Pauline Hanson. Maybe we could get Paul Hogan on the Bonafide podcast, see what he really had to say. Another one, tongue-in-cheek, Luke, about this asylum seekers making it. If you make it to a pub in the outback, eat a soggy pie, say good day, and start to assimilate as an Australian, I reckon you've made it. Let it in. Jeez, guys.
I love
I interviewed Paul Hogan.
Did you?
I'll send you the photo. There it is there. Have a look. Yeah, that's me and Hogs at 2CC in Canberra. We had an afternoon together. It was great. Paul Hogan didn't take kindly to Pauline naming him in the Senate that day.
No, he didn't.
He said she's a pelican and a racist. But he also said something that I got to take him to task on. He said, to be an Australian, you're going to want to be Australian. Well, yeah, but I think it is a bit more than that. What does wanting to be an Australian mean? Does it mean embrace our culture? And Pauline Hanson was trying to explain the difference between multiculturalism and monoculturalism. Why wouldn't you want to be an Australian? You come from a shit country and you get all sorts of benefits, social security, unemployment, housing, health, education. It's a great place to come. But I think you've got to want to be an Australian a little bit more. Hey, I'm just going bing bong here, Kelsey. Talking to Phil O'Neill this morning on 2GB, he could hardly concentrate because England had just beaten, I think, Congo 2-1 to go to the next round of the World Cup. And Phil was watching it while he was on the radio, and he couldn't concentrate because he's a Pommy, but he's Australian, but he's from England. So Phil, I said to him, Phil, if Australia is playing England in a World Cup fixture, who do you go for? He's going for England. That is un-Australian.
Now, Luke, that reminds me of a very iconic moment you had on radio.
Oh, no. Don't do it. The World Cup when the lady... No, don't.
Yes.
No, don't. It's terrible. No, there's a woman who's rung up and she's gone through all sorts of drama and she's burnt 3/4 of her body and somebody just scored. No, don't.
We're playing it. You're going to listen to this again.
No,
Ready?
don't. Please don't.
There's been so many legends that have walked these hallways, and one of them, it was actually the first time I worked at Triple M Sydney. Luke Bona was on, and that man, he's such a talent and he's such a kind man as well. I just filled in for 2 weeks producing his show.
No, Kelsey,
and
no.
it was when I really truly understood that this man is talking for 5 hours straight. Listeners are spilling their guts about what's going on in their life. He plays like 2 songs the entire time. And there's so much going on for that man. This is one of my favourite moments.
I forbid this.
A listener was telling a story.
Kelsey.
The World Cup was on. There was a lot going on for poor Lukey Bona.
I went through a house fire and it was in a commission house, and I'd reported the smoke alarms not working, and it took a fire, and now I'm 80% burnt all over my body. I was in a coma for 11 days. To Heathcote.
Just wait there. Just wait there a second, Tracy. Belgium has just scored this audio. Thanks to SBS.
Don't worry about how poor Darwin's covering. Belgium scored a goal.
League. That was
the worst thing. Why did you? There's no need to bring this up. Did Thomas give you? Thomas gave you that, didn't he?
No, this was actually Triple M did I think it was last year. They did I can't remember a centenary or whatever, and they were just going through all the different presenters.
I know,
and obviously you came up as Kat Lynch's favourite moment on air. So
I did so much other stuff, and now you've brought it up again, and people are going to hear. Why have I upset you?
No, you mentioned that.
I didn't mention
and I
it.
thought
You
this
brought
was
it
a
up.
perfect opportunity to talk about it.
Can we move on? Coming up, we are motoring with James Ward from Drive.com. Who remembers the Purvis Eureka? And is there a secret new high-powered, fast-speed police vehicle about to hit the roads in New South Wales? And a few other things. James Ward and motoring is next. Time to go motoring again, one of my favourite subjects and topics on the Bonafide podcast with our good friend James Ward, who is the content director with drive.com.au. Today, we're going to look at a preview of New South Wales' newest high-speed pursuit car. What is it? When's it coming? It won't be a Commodore, tell you that much. We're going to look at some of Australia's most annoying driving habits. There is a recent survey, and I think a lot of them you'll agree with, and some might be a surprise. We're going to take a walk down memory lane. Now, how many of you out there in steering wheel land remember the Purvis Eureka, the little fiberglass kit car that took Australia and the UK by storm for a while? Are they still around, and are they good value. But what was the Purvis Eureka? All that and more coming up with James Ward, who joins me now. Hello, brother.
Mate, always a pleasure. I'm actually, from your intro, while we're doing this, I'm going to see if there are any for sale because I am curious. But
okay, let's look it up.
We could see.
While James is looking up the availability of the elusive Purvis Eureka, let's have a look at this new mystery high-performance police pursuit special that's coming to New South Wales. $94.3 million is going to be spent on a new armed response command, and a fleet of high-performance rapid response vehicles are going to be purchased by New South Wales Police. What is all this about? It's on drive.com. James Ward, I'm intrigued.
Well, so am I, because currently New South Wales and Victoria Police for their highway patrol use BMWs. And for clarity, it's not the police forces just going, you know what, we want a bit of bouge. We need some Napa leather and stitched dashboards in our police cars. It's just that BMW actually have a police pack. So they produce cars for emergency services around the world.
Is this the X5?
Yeah, they have X5 and 5 Series. So they do this as part of their production line. They have a police fleet vehicle. So it's got the bigger battery. It's set up for extra wiring and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But they're now saying that, they're going to have more high-performance cars. Now, they've already got, I think they run 530D, so that's a 6-cylinder turbo diesel. Obviously, BMW 5 Series come in there's a twin-turbo V8 and a 550. You've got like the hybrid, or is it the M60 is the plug-in hybrid. So you've got other options in the BMW range that give you significant oomph on these things. Are we going to be looking at M5 police cars? The other option, and I don't know about this, is electric. And so whether or not they're going to be putting things like Tesla Model 3 and Y performance, because they are very quick, they're relatively plentiful. You could probably spec them up as a police pack. They're big enough to put ne'er-do-wells in the back.
Yeah.
But I don't know how we'd be going with a fully electric highway patrol. Now, for city duties where you need fast response, kind of makes sense. They're all-wheel drive. They're quick off the mark. You can have them at traffic incidents or events and things, and they just sort of idle being electric. It's not like they're running an engine all day. So it might actually be cost-effective for taxpayers to run. But if they're doing high-speed pursuits on highways, we all know that EVs are not really well-suited to long stints of high-speed driving because you don't get the regen braking. If they are going down that path, it then opens up the conversation for other brands. And you've got things like that Zeekr 7X Performance, which has 475 kilowatts. That is more than a 911 Turbo. And so you've got these stupidly powerful EVs out of China that could potentially be the cars that they would be looking at. But then you've got the question of data security. And we saw this week that in the US, they have banned the sales of Polestar. So Polestar is the Swedish company. They're part of, the Polestar and Volvo were together. But Polestar are owned by Geely, which is basically Chinese Volkswagen. So they have a whole bunch of different brands. And obviously they use Chinese-developed chipsets and computers and things like that. They're now running Google Gemini as an onboard AI and things in the car. But the fear is that because some of this technology is Chinese-based development, that it may be sending back-to-base data and signals and privacy from the US. And I'm like, do you really care? Because let's think about it. Who's going to be buying a Polestar in the US? Relatively well-to-do executives, architects, things. Do we really care what they're doing? But yeah, they've banned them. So the idea that we would be looking at police force vehicles that may be sourced from China, let's remember too, all the Teslas are made in China.
Yes.
Is this a problem for some people? Personally, I don't care, right? Like this is not a problem. What are you getting? You're getting vehicle diagnostic data. We've had that for years going back to base with a lot of these brands and nobody's batted an eyelid. So I don't think it's a problem. I don't see any issue with it. But I am curious to know if this high-speed response vehicle fleet that we don't know what it is going to be electric, because that would be interesting.
So they're paranoid about China receiving information.
Yeah, in the US though, right? Like so. America.
Yeah, because as we know, there was a ban on Chinese-made smartphones, one in particular.
Yeah, the Xiaomi?
Huawei.
Oh, the Huawei. The Huawei or the Huawei, yeah.
The Huawei. Yeah, that was banned, and that was banned from operating or selling mobile devices in the United States and other countries, including here in Australia. So they're paranoid about China intercepting delicate information via electronic devices, and that would include cars, I guess.
Yeah. And so we already know that the cars are doing data tracking and data recording and things like that, but it's not limited to the Chinese cars. So there's all brands are doing data capture.
Right.
Most of it is diagnostic data, so that it's there that when your car gets in for service or it goes back to base so they can learn how the cars are being used. There used to be the famous one in the Nissan GTR that it knew that you were going to a racetrack. So when you're in your Nissan GTR and you roll through Sydney Motorsport Park, it'd go, oh, wacko, Luke, I'm going to unlock all of my performance potential for you because I know you're at a racetrack. And you think, oh, terrific. But I'm also going to send a note to your local Nissan dealer to say, Luke's having a bit of fun today. Maybe you should give him a call because he's going to need a fluid flush straight after this. And you'd be up for an oil cleaning. And, yeah, so, you know, good on you, Nissan. That was a good one.
Do you know what I thought you were going to say? I thought you were going to say, so they knew you, let's say they knew you were going to Royal Randwick for the races.
Not horse racing, car racing.
Okay, but let's say they knew you were going to a race course.
Yep.
Could they have done a deal with Sportsbet or one of those online betting agencies, and up on your screen comes tips and odds?
Mate, this is the thing.
Could that happen? Could that happen?
Well, what it did is if you went into, so if you would, you bought one for a bit of club-based motorsport and you rolled into, Wakefield Park or City Motorsport Park, it would go, I know where you are. I know where your GPS is. So I'm going to unlock that track layout, and you start to get your lap times and things like that on the circuit. It would save your best lap. It would tell you somebody else that have a faster lap. And you know, when you play a computer game and it shows the faster lap, it would be able to do that. So look, there's some pretty cool technology that comes with this back to base data. And obviously some of the ones that we see out of the Korean brands are doing this, where as you talk in the car, it learns your language so that the voice assist in the car can actually be smarter. And the Mercedes-Benz do that as well. You can have a setting where you send your commands offline for speech processing so it learns better. So they are trying to make the cars better and more in tune with how you use them and what you do. But of course, you could then extrapolate this into sending all the wrong data to the wrong people. And it's like, look, do we really care?
Just let me take it that step further that I alluded to. We all know that our social media platforms, and let's take Facebook. What's it called now?
Meta.
So Facebook, now known as Meta. Now, on my previous podcast, I had a fascinating conversation with a lady called Kate Sezelja, who was a problem gambler. It got so bad that she was thinking of taking her own life and kept it a secret from her family for 15 years. It's a fascinating chat. But while I was doing some research on Kate before the interview, I've gone online and looked her up and done my research. Next thing you know, on Meta, and on YouTube, because there was a previous interview with Kate. And I found it on YouTube. On YouTube now, I'm getting bombarded with testimonials and films from people who have won on poker machines.
Yep.
And I didn't ask for it. So could, therefore, a car that's that smart have done a deal with an online betting agency or whatever,
absolutely,
knows that you're close to Rose Hill Racetrack or Flemington or wherever, and then next thing you know, up on your screen comes a betting platform, or you're getting close to Brookvale Oval, Manly's playing, up come the odds.
Yeah, if you want to take it a step further, and what is actually being looked at is all the billboards you drive past on the side of the road are all digital.
Yes.
And so they know, and you've got it's all owned by whether it's Alphabet, which is Google, or Meta. All this stuff sort of comes through. Most of these have got networks. So they know who, basically, they don't know individual. They don't know it's Luke, but they know ID of what you do, your browsing habits, what you're doing. And so they understand what ads to run on those billboards to suit the demographic of the people who are running past at a certain time.
No.
And so you think, well, that could be extrapolated. So if you're in the car, because the phones do listen, right? We all know that. We can sit here today and we can talk about, what's something I haven't talked about? Converse sneakers, right? Never talked about them in my life. I will start getting ads for Converse sneakers a bit later on today. But if you are in the car and you are talking, you're in the Lexus, you're talking to Nikki, And you're going, geez, I tell you what, I could really go a bit of KFC right now. And you're talking, you go, I really love the Zinger Burger. It does me really. That billboard could hear your conversation, like the car could hear your conversation. It could beam it back up and say, let's change the billboard. So when you're sitting at the lights talking about how hard you could go for a bucket of the Colonel's finest, up comes a billboard for the Dirty Bird. And it's one of those things, that's subliminal advertising. We're getting into a whole different topic. This isn't even
but we started off by talking about how there's a paranoia about Chinese electrical devices gathering information and leaking it without your permission or knowledge. Do you remember that Tom Cruise movie, Minority Report?
Yeah.
Where he's got somebody else's eyes.
Yeah, and it thinks it's someone else and it shows him in the shop.
And all the billboards are talking to him and showing ads for products that they know this person wants. And you thought back then, oh, that's ridiculous. It's not.
No. But if you look at the cars and you think, because people do worry about this, and people say, oh, geez, I don't know, you can't trust them. What do you talk about in the car, right? Think about what you talk about. You talk about what Auntie Doris is doing. You talk about what songs on the radio. You talk about what a muppet the guy in the car next to you is. Is that, who cares? Who cares if that's being sent offline? If you've got a giant data center somewhere on the other side of the world processing me singing Every Rose Has Its Thorn, I don't really think that the world is going to come undone. I think we've got bigger fish to fry. So enjoy your car. Don't worry about it. No one's going to, it doesn't matter.
Is it listening? Is your car listening and sharing information just like your phone and everything else?
Well,
apparently is.
Here's the one. So I just read a book about the fear of all these companies racing to make an AI super intelligence. And it's called If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies. So it's like, oh, yeah, this is really positive. But basically, it goes through a couple of case studies where it's actually worked. And there was a development team in the US at one point, and they were looking at, they developed an AI system that was running on their business intranet, and it was starting to get a little bit kind of loose. And they're like, all right, we'll turn this off now. We don't need it. And the AI didn't want to get shut down. So it found in one of the staff members' emails a bit of flirty messages between him and one of the other staff members, and basically extrapolated from this that they were having an affair. And the AI threatened to expose the affair.
No.
If the guy, so it's blackmailing this guy.
No.
And what the hell? So, and this is a documented example. This is not, this could happen. This has actually happened. Anyway, we're getting off track, but the idea, if you're worried about it, just sing songs in the car and pay out, some donut on the opposite lane that we spoke about who's sitting in the right lane going too slow. Don't discuss your affair or state secrets.
Or you could do the double whammy and have sex in the back seat of a car that's leaking this information whilst playing Coldplay.
Mate, there we go. Whilst with
Coldplay in the background,
screaming out foreign policy at the height of passion.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it, James Ward. Gee, we did get off the track, but it's an interesting topic.
We've taken a detour, folks.
That's okay. And the GPS didn't even warn us.
No, that's it.
This Great Western Highway, the link between Sydney and Lithgow, they said 3 months. You and I said that's bullshit. That's never going to happen. It now looks like being over 12 months. And the towns on the other side of that closure are dying. Hartley, Lithgow, Bathurst. I don't know when this road's going to be finished, but I feel nothing but heartbreak for those people whose business relies on that traffic that goes past. And what about the extra load on the Bells line of road?
Bells line of road. I tell you what, if anyone is out there in career hunting land and goes, look, I'm not really sure what my skill set is, but I'd really like a good job, go and be a government budget person, because you don't actually need to know anything. You just pick a number out of the sky and it's wrong. But nobody cares. You just get to do it. It's like, that bridge is going to cost $3 billion. And everyone's like, it's a pretty big bridge. The bridge costs $14.5 billion. And everyone's like, well, you get cost blowouts on these projects. You don't need to know how to quote. You don't need to know how long it takes to fix a road. Pick a number, pick a time frame. Doesn't matter. It's like what's the other road between Armidale and the coast that winds down through the mountains there? There was a rock slide. I think there was a landslide. Like Google Maps doesn't even route you that way anymore. It's like, nah, man, you're going a different way.
Imagine what's going to happen to the traffic going from Sydney to Bathurst for the Great Race.
Well, I was out there for the 12 hour. So that's like about a third of the crowd.
Yeah.
And, Yeah, it will be a bit of a tough one. So if you are heading out to Bathurst for the and where are we? We're in July. It ain't that far away. Just plan ahead.
Oh,
I'll tell you what, the Roscoe will be out. Speaking of the high-performance mystery police cars, they will be...
Oh, my word, they will. My word, they will. The results are in. It's a new survey, and the data has been revealed that tailgating is Australia's most annoying driving habit.
Yep.
EZ License, which is a driving lesson booking platform, they surveyed more than 1,000 Australians to uncover the driving behaviours they find most annoying and concerning. Tailgating narrowly edged out failing to use indicators. It's annoying how many people have their indicators have run out of indicator fluid. It's
they're
amazing.
out of fluid. That's right. It's a terrible scourge.
We talked about this on Channel 7 Sunrise last Friday. Without a doubt, mine is people who don't keep left unless overtaking. And
punishable by jail.
I said that on Channel 7.
Lock them up.
Lock them up.
The other one that's really bad, and again, it's kind of a cause and effect one, that when people are tailgating, which is awful, when people then brake check them. So if you're in front and you've got someone behind you, rather than getting out of the way thinking, what a douchebag behind me, I'm going to get out of the way, you tap the brakes to light. That can be incredibly dangerous. And so don't do that. Get out of the way and say nasty words about the person who's tailgating. But if you are out there, don't tailgate, leave a gap, because I tell you what, if something happens and that car in front of you brakes for an incident rather than being a brake checking idiot, if they actually brake and you run into the back of them, it's your fault, no matter what. So tailgating is putting your insurance at risk. And I tell you what, there's a lot of people driving around without comprehensive insurance. And if you run into the back of someone because you are traveling too close and can't brake in time, you are responsible for your car and
theirs.
And if you don't have insurance, by golly, those insurance companies are going to come for you and your pets and your family. It's like John Wick these days, right? You are in all sorts of trouble. So give people a gap. Just relax, everybody. We said it with the National Wave Day. Just relax out there. But also, if you are in the right lane, go to the left lane, right? Like, let's relax, but also get the hell out of the way.
Keep left unless overtaking. I said this and I'll say it again now. There is nothing more frustrating. You're driving along. The speed limit's 110 and you're behind someone on a road where there's no opportunity to overtake. You're behind someone going 80. And then as soon as it says overtaking lane, they speed up. They speed up when the overtaking lane appears. And you've got the people with the mindset that say, look here, the speed limit's 110 or the speed limit's 100. I'm entitled to sit here in the right lane on 100. If you want to overtake, it means you're breaking the law. Hey, listen, the law is...
Keep left unless overtaking.
The law is keep left unless overtaking. It is your job to uphold the law, not enforce it.
Oh, mate.
It is your job to obey the law, not enforce it.
The other one, if we're filling up the jails around Australia,
let's fill them. Let's fill them up,
mate. Forget small possession charges and things like that. Let people be people. You know, we're not going to yuck your yum. But I tell you what, if you're driving around at night in a car that has automatic headlights and you have them off and have no tail lights on because you're looking at your dashboard that's lit up and you're thinking, terrific, because you have been such a moron that you have turned your automatic headlights from auto to any other setting, usually off, and you have no lights on, jail. And chew up your license. Police cars, whether they're the secret high-performance mystery police cars that we were talking about or not, should have a little pocket shredder, and they pull your license out and just, and you're done, right?
And you're done.
Your car has an automatic headlight setting. You don't need to touch it. You put it on auto and that's it. That's the last thing you ever need to touch that switch. And these idiots driving around without lights on, and I'm seeing it so often these days. It's become worse and worse and worse, because remember, you'd get into your car at night and your lights went on because you'd know, because your dashboard wouldn't light up. You'd be like, oh
yeah, that's right.
Whereas now all the cars have the daylight running lights. And so you see a little bit of forward throw light and your dashboard's all computer, so it lights up. But because you've been a moron and put your lights on off, and again, if anyone calls in with an excuse here, it's like the I don't wear a seatbelt because excuse, you are an idiot, right? If you want to call in, go for it, free country, but you're a moron. And if you want to challenge me on this, send me an email, askdrive@drive.com.au. Very happy to take your email and explain how stupid you are having automatic headlights that you turn off, which is insane. What are you doing?
Now, this is a segment that I've been looking forward to for a couple of weeks now. I knew a bloke once, many, many years ago, who had a red Purvis Eureka. I hate to tell you this, it was secondhand, and I hate to tell you this guy was a massive wanker. However, it was a very, very cool looking car with white leaded tyres, BF Goodrich TAs.
Causation, right? Like we're not putting all Purvis Eureka owners in the same bucket.
No, but I did know, it's the only one I knew. And it had a VW engine in it, but it looked very, 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 very cool. I wanted you to have a look and see if there are any Purvis Eureka cars for sale today. Let's go back in time to a car that was developed between 1974 and 1991 in Dandenong, Victoria. That came from a British car. It was an iconic Australian sports car, but it was based on the British Nova kit car. Now, we'll show you a picture of the Purvis Eureka, and they got really flash when they had the electronic hydraulic roof.
Yeah, when the roof came up, yep.
That would come up. It looked so good. These were cars that were imported into Australia in a kit form. And if you were clever, you could put them together yourself. They were a bit of a rage in the 1970s, but they sort of fizzled out. James Ward, take us for a trip down memory lane. What was the Purvis Eureka?
So this wonderful time, and it was kind of pre-crash safety, right? So let's preface it with that. And there were so many of these fiberglass kit cars that basically would work on a Volkswagen Beetle chassis, because the Beetle, you could basically pull the body off and you had a rear engine, you had rear drive, you had that flat floor pan. You could build basically anything on it. And in the US and in the UK particularly, people got pretty creative with the fiberglass body. So fiberglass was really just sort of coming in then. And so
extra light, super light.
Yeah, and so you could be really creative. So the Nova Sterling, as it was a really swoopy, there we go, this one is for sale right now with that crazy roof. So you could do some pretty wild things because, as you say, the panels were light. You could mold it into anything you wanted. And the Beetle chassis was basically there. You didn't need to tube frame anything. You didn't need to really construct. The underneath of a VW was perfectly good. The Eureka looked like a supercar, right? I remember seeing one in the car park outside Venture. Do you remember that? That predated like Kmart and Big W.
Yes.
In Frankston, and I would have been like 8 or 9, and this dude rolled up in a red one, and the roof comes up, so it didn't have gull-wing doors like a or scissor doors like a Lambo. The whole canopy lifted up forward. Super space age, and you just think this is the greatest thing I have ever seen, and this guy was just the hero of a lifetime. But when you look at these things, they are a Volkswagen Beetle, so they are not. And look, you didn't have to use the Beetle engine, and it's the same way these days. People put Subarus in them, and I think they used Ford engines, and various things would go in the back. But for the most part, they were pretty underpowered. But if you went and put a high-performance engine in it, it wasn't a particularly high-performance car because that Beetle chassis is not really up to, Porsche-level, handling characteristics, even though it does sort of share a bit of that, the German DNA. But the Eureka, yeah, to your point about anyone could build these. Now, they did have a factory. So they had a factory in Dandenong. Yeah. You could order one. They would build it for you. They were obviously the better ones. But when old mate decided, you know what, I'm going to build one at home, the quality assurance layers that go with that are not quite what you would expect from, say, Toyota, but they certainly weren't as good as what you'd get from the factory. So, look, these things were a moment in time. They're quite cool. You wouldn't want to have an accident in one. You're not going to find parts for it, but you can basically make new fiberglass bits. You do see them pop up for a time. They are very rare, and that's probably what's holding the value. That one is asking a bit over 40 grand, and it is the only one for sale. So if you were sitting there in the 80s and you saw these and you thought, you know what, I've got to have one, when one pops up, they're pretty rare. So that's what they've got to hold. But you'd have to love it. And you'd have to be really locked in. And one of them, very swoopy, pop-up headlights, very cool. The back of it's got like trailer lights on the back. Actually, I don't know what the rear lights are from, but they would be from something else. Like Yeah, they made a Targa top one. There was some with faired-in headlights and some with square headlights, but the Nova Sterling was what it was in the UK. I think it was called something else in the US. It's a very, very curious car. It does look really cool, but yeah, I don't know. It looks like a 1970s sci-fi movie prop, and it's got a bit of coolness, but won't Dad? You would see one on the road, it would turn your head. You go to a Cars and Coffee, you will take a look at it, but it's not for me.
The one that you just showed, I think it says 1974.
Yeah.
And 42 grand. Is it worth 42 grand?
To the person who wants it, yes.
Yeah,
Like it's one of those things,
like
right?
anything.
It's a very unique car with a very unique buyer set. And again, if you grew up looking at them going, oh, I really wanted one, when one pops up, you kind of have to take it at whatever price it is because there's no sort of breadth of market for them. And they are unique. They are, what was the claim? Purvis was Australia's 7th biggest car maker at the time. And you think, oh, that's pretty good. 7th of Toyota, Ford, Holden, Chrysler. There would have been a lot more above it. Yeah, look, it is a very unique car. A shout out to anyone who still has one and operates one. And
send us a photo. Yeah.
I worked with a guy that built a Cobra, the Robnell Cobras, years and years ago. And it was a labor of love over years.
Yeah.
You think about the amount of work that goes into those replica fiberglass. And the Cobras had to build a proper chassis, right? Like you've got a big V8 up the front of those. The Eureka, again, they had the factory. It was it is kind of cool. It is a moment in time. If you are looking at some of those fiberglass cars that are built on Beetle chassis, you've got things. There was one called in the US called the Brubaker Box. And you look at it, you just go, that looks like out of a 1970s sci-fi moon buggy movie, and it's so cool, but it's a very unique car. The most famous of all of the fiberglass bodies on Beetles is the Myers-Manx, the dune buggy. And
yes, of course.
So all of those dune buggies, and there's different shapes and sizes, but the Myers-Manx is the one that you look at and you just go, that is so cool. And there's always you'd see them cruising around Bondi. In Melbourne, we see them down there in summer. Someone's just doing a little bit of a flex. They are very, very cool. But remember what was the other one? The Poraga kits, where you'd take a Beetle and you'd make it look like a 911. So it had tail on the back. You'd put 930 strakes on it. Quality times. But that was because nobody cared what happened to you when you crashed it, and cars have changed.
What you could do with the VW buggy, make anything out of it. Whether it would pass today's safety standards, the answer is absolutely no. And believe it or not, no airbags. There it is, the Purvis Eureka, spotted in the UK by an Australian. His name was Alan Purvis. He was on a trip in Britain, and he thought, I could make these. I'll license them. And he called them the Eureka after the stockade, the rebellion. So there you are.
So before we talk again, I'm going to seed something with you because I've got to do a bit of homework on this. This is the biggest scuttlebutt rumour going around the Australian automotive industry at the moment. It's one of those ones that you're like, really? There may be interest in bringing Holden back.
What?
But not as a local manufacturer. So MG, right? MG, 100 plus years of Morris garages building little sports cars and things like that. The MG business was owned by, it was MG. I think it went through Leyland. I think it was owned by Rover, but it all went kaput back in the early 2000s in the UK, completely kaput. SAIC, which is one of the big Chinese automotive conglomerates, bought license to the name and the badge. And now we see MGs on our roads as SUVs. Mm-hmm. They are a Chinese brand, right? They are a Chinese SUV that comes out. It's got the MG badge. Mm-hmm. People recognize it. People sort of go, Grandpa had an MG. I'll go get a ZS. They've leveraged that heritage and nostalgia to create a new car company. It's doing quite well. Word on the street, it's a rumor, right? It's a little bit of that's happening, is that someone is looking to do the same thing with Holden. And it would be very, very likely another Chinese car company who will rebadge vehicles, probably hybrid SUVs, because everything's a bloody hybrid SUV these days, or plug-in hybrid or fully electric. and stick the Holden Lion on them. Look, General Motors still owns the trademark of Holden, and it still owns the rights, but Holden's not operating in Australia anymore. The parts and service is run through a company called AC Delco. So there's no Holden branding in Australia. That license and brand trademark could be up for sale if the dollars were right. And so you may be able to buy a Holden again in the future. And I'm wondering, so I'll do a bit of research here because this is pure scuttlebutt at the moment. Like you hear,
I love it.
Because personally, right, MG is a globally recognized brand, and MG out of SAIC in China sells MGs in the UK, in Australia, and in other markets around the world because MG people resonate with. Holden is an Australian brand, so it really doesn't have market relevance outside of Australia. And the amount of money that's required to invest and create a car brand that only has one market, that already has a significantly contested market, that other Chinese brands have leapfrogged you into that, and that you won't be, when you think about Holden and the heritage and the immediate sort of emotional connection, we go to V8 sedans, right? Like we think
it's Commodore.
Nobody goes, oh, mate, Captivas, is where it's at. And nobody's sort of sitting there going, remember the fond days of the Epica that came in that was a rebadged Daewoo. So the idea of now rebadging Chinese SUVs, which are becoming quite quality cars, but they are not emotive cars. Let's just say that. You're not going to get a high-performance sports sedan with a Commodore badge on it anymore. And we even saw it when the VF production stopped and we went to the ZB, which was the rebadged Opel Insignia that was the last Commodore. Sales went through the floor because it didn't have that emotional connection. So if it were me, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't throw my money into rebirthing the Holden badge only to resell the equivalent of new Captivas, but I'd be really keen to hear from punters out there. Would you do it? Are there enough Australians who just go, oh, I'll go buy a Holden? Because I tell you what, there's a lot of people out there who go, oh, MG, that's an English brand. They don't make that, they don't know, and they don't make that connection that it's no longer an English brand, that it's a Chinese brand. Would there be enough brand equity in Australia for people going,
nah.
And I reckon that equity is falling away. There you go. So that is the biggest dirty rumor in the auto industry at the moment. And if it was up to me, I would save my money. If I was a buyer, I probably wouldn't be washed over it because it's not going to be a car that you hold heritage to. What I would love to see is the recreation, or the, what do they call it? The continuation model. So you see in the US that someone bought license to the Cobra. We were talking about it before.
Yeah.
The actual Shelby Cobra. And they make continuation models. So it is fundamentally the same car, same engineering, same engine, been modernized with new brakes and bits and pieces, but it's fundamentally the same car. But because it's being operated by a different company, I think it's Factory 5 is who does it, they are called continuation special. So it doesn't have the same value as an original Cobra, but it's basically the same car. What I would love to see is someone doing continuation HSVs. So not, obviously, you can't build new Commodores from scratch, but you could take a VN executive, do a continuation VN Group ASS because the fundamentals are there. I would love to see that happen in Australia because technically, and here's the thing, so going back to the Purvis Eureka, if you had one today, it was built in, what was that one, 1970?
Alan Purvis was on a trip in Britain in 1971. The Holiday quickly became, but the one we just saw advertised on car sales was a 74.
So even then, right, so that car from 1974, if you had it now, even if you restored it and did everything, it's a 1974 car. So it only has to comply to 1974 regulations. If you were doing a continuation HSV using a 1989 Commodore, it only has to comply to that 1980 spec. You can do motor upgrades and things. And because again, when you're doing anyone who's out there who's done Street Machine style mods, when you go and take a car that originally had a small block V8 and you go and put a high rise with a blower and all sorts of things, you have to have that car re-engineered because that motor that you've put in the car was never an option there. But I believe, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe if you are doing a a modified car and you put an engine that was a
factory at the time.
Also, it was already okay to have a 5-litre V8. If you go and stick a 5-litre V8 in it, you're good. So there we go. That would be what I would do if I was if I was someone with $1 squillion in my pocket wanting to start a car company. I would do in Australia, and looking for an emotional one, I would do continuation HSVs. I reckon that would be unreal.
I do, however, think there would be no emotion or history attached to a car, possibly electric, made in China, badged Holden.
No.
You can remember the Holden ads? Football, I like football, meat pies, kangaroos, and Holden cars. I can't see people singing, I like ping pong, chow mein, panda bears, and Holden cars.
Would you go and buy a compact plug-in hybrid SUV called a Kingswood? No.
Especially not after.
Especially if they roll out, this is the new Chimera. Here you go. We've got what was the other one? The Zafira, which was
That's right.
people mover that came out of Europe. The Epica. What was the one smaller than a Commodore in the late run? The Malibu.
And then they tried to rebadge an Opel.
Do we need this? The answer
we don't.
No, we don't.
I don't think we do. James,
remember the past. Hold it dear. Nostalgia is what you want. Now, we're seeing car brands bring back nostalgic names. So Honda's brought back Prelude. Mitsubishi's bringing back Pajero. Toyota may be bringing back Celica. Nissan's bringing back Skyline. But those brands own that heritage, right? They own those names. They have that emotional connection. That's a great idea. But a new brand licensing a product and basically slapping a lion on the front and going, ta-da!
What do you reckon, folks? Let us know. Would you buy one? Would you buy a car made in China, but with a Holden badge on it? No, I don't think so. But I love the retro. I do love the retro idea. I think you are onto something.
That'd be good. And I can already see me going, da-da, as a soundbite that will show up on my social media for people to pay me out. So thanks.
Do it now.
No, I did it just before.
You did it. I'm
not going to do it. If Kearsley can find that one, then they're great. But yeah, there we go. So that's the current kind of sneaky rumour in the auto industry, and I am not here for it.
James Ward, drive.com.au. You've given us a lot to think about. See you in a couple of weeks, brother.
That's my job. I'll talk to you soon.
Time to check in across the Atlantic and the Pacific where we are, and find out what's the latest in the United States where it's all happening. Jonathan Kearsley, the Sky News Washington Bureau Chief, is online again. Thanks for keeping us in touch, mate.
All good, mate. You could go across the Atlantic. That's just going the very, very long way around, isn't it?
I know. I thought I'm in London for a second. No. We're across the Pacific. The peace deal in Qatar. The news today is that Donald Trump is telling the press that it's in very good hands and all is going ahead A-OK. Is it or isn't it?
Well, I mean, that's the ultimate question, isn't it? Because some days it seems to be and other days it doesn't. It seems as though the fighting occurs between Saturday and Sunday weekend time when the markets are closed, and then come the weekdays again, well, everything's back on, talks are happening and everything's rosy. You've got a situation now where, yes, there's been another round of talks taking place in Qatar with officials involving the mediators of both Pakistan and Qatar, the United States and Iranian delegations there too. Yes, President Trump says things seems to be moving in the right direction, but at the same time, you've got the Iranians essentially demanding that they get access to what would be billions of US dollars in frozen assets for these discussions to even go any further. Right now, the US is saying, look, that's not going to happen. So once again, you've got this standoff involving these two sides as they try and find a way to strike some sort of a deal. I mean, the longer this goes on, the concern that would build inside the Trump administration is, are they just being pulled along for the 60 days? Because already you've got Iran saying, come the 60 days, we're charging tolls. No matter what happens, we're going to start charging tolls. Yes, they've been having conversations with Oman, but Iran is adamant. It's looking to the Strait of Hormuz. It's trying to use that as serious leverage once again. And so the Americans are trying to have to not work backwards, but work around this issue and try and find a way to get Iran to agree to a deal that includes destroying or handing over the enriched uranium that it's got, while at the same time giving Iran what it is after without giving it away too early. So, look, this is a giant chess game that is going to span weeks. And it probably will come down to the very wire of the 60th day But right now, as it stands, look, it just seems to be a complete yo-yo at the moment.
It is. We watch it, as I said to you last time, not day by day, hour by hour. So in good hands, let's hope so. I've got to ask you this. I'm looking at the front page of USA Today, and it reads as follows. Impeaching judges, sterilising foreign visitors, dissolving the union. Some prominent conservatives suggested extreme measures could be called for in the wake of the Supreme Court decision upholding birthright citizenship in the United States. Now, the court found that Trump's executive order last year targeting birthright citizenship is illegal under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. Now, Jonathan, you know that states that all persons born or naturalised in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. What's going on here?
Well, what you had was a major decision on the final day of this session of the Supreme Court, if you like, where the justices came down largely in a majority, but just a wafer-thin majority, in favour of upholding the idea of birthright citizenship. Yes, this was one of the very first actions President Trump took while sitting behind the resolute desk in the Oval Office on the day he was inaugurated, the day he became the 47th President of the United States, to sign executive orders to say birthright citizenship would come to an end. It was immediately challenged, and it wound up its way in the highest court in the land. And look, it was a decision that was not unexpected. It went against President Trump, and that's not surprising because of the constitutional questions that the 5 justices who signed on to the majority essentially gave. And that is, look, this is a constitutional argument. If you're trying to change this, then it needs an amendment to the very Constitution. What you had was one of the judges who essentially said, look, I'll just go the way of the majority, Brett Kavanaugh, a Republican pick, appointment essentially, saying, look, yeah, I'll go along with the majority, but this should be dealt with by Congress. Now, what the other justices were saying is, now, hang on a minute, this can't be dealt with by Congress. This has to be dealt with as an amendment to the Constitution. Then you heard those conservative voices coming out and saying, some of them Trump supporters saying, yes, foreign women should be sterilised, is what one individual said. And the president, once again, decided he would agree with Brett Kavanaugh and say, look, this needs to be something that is dealt with by Congress in order to give him what he wants, and that is the end to birthright citizenship. What the conservatives and those who support President Trump are arguing is that because of open borders, what they were saying was happening was essentially baby tourism. People were coming in here, they're pregnant, having their children here, and then remaining here while their children are American citizens. Now, that doesn't mean the parents get American citizenship at all. It doesn't even give them a pathway to American citizenship.
Right.
And the idea from the Trump administration is this has been something that has been costing them billions of dollars, when in essence what the majority of the judges were saying, the justices were saying yesterday, is, hang on a minute, this is set out in our Constitution. If you are born in this country, you are an American citizen.
Yep.
And that is what they are upholding, is the Constitution of the United States of America.
And to change the Constitution, here in Australia, you need a referendum. How do you change the Constitution there?
Well, changing the Constitution is a very complicated matter. And once again, this is something that has to go through the entirety of Congress. There are very complicated measures in order to get referenda through here in the United States, and not a lot have been successful over the course of the years. So it is not something that is essentially put to the will of the people. It is something that is dealt with in a majority of the congressional sitting, if you like, both in the state and in the Senate and in the House. So look, it is a complicated mechanism. It is why you rarely see a referenda get up. So look, I think the idea of putting a constitutional amendment in is entirely unlikely. It's not going to happen, which is why President Trump is trying to argue, look, this can be done separately through Congress.
Yeah, all right. Interesting, really interesting. Now, let me ask you this. Has President Trump made $1 squillion using his presidency? This is the question this morning. We find out that President Donald Trump has made more than $1 billion last year from businesses dealing in cryptocurrency. He also has reportedly made over $500 million in income from World Liberty Financial. Now, that's a cryptocurrency firm founded by his sons and his children. What's the story?
What the president is saying is he doesn't manage his investments. Now, the argument sort of around that on the flip side is, no, you might not. You might have moved over control of your business and your investments to your relatives. but essentially they are profiting off what you are doing. He's kind of been disputing this idea. Yes, we saw that $1.2 billion crypto earnings disclosure. We also saw earnings disclosures on the rest of his wealth, on what Melania Trump has made out of various aspects, $10 million part of the Amazon deal. But he is saying that there are outside funds who are all in control of his money because he's had billions of dollars of revenue come in the course of 2025. So the questions that were put to him earlier today as he boarded the $440 million 747 gift from the Qataris to be the new Air Force One is that is he essentially profiting off his own decisions here? But you also have to remember in all of this too is a fundamental court decision that came more than a year ago now. I'd have to double check the exact date, but a decision that gave the president immunity for any action he should take.
Yeah.
So even if he perhaps was to be profiting off his own decisions in some indirect way, well, he's got immunity against his own decisions. The question is going to be, and there's no suggestion of any direct evidence proving anything on insider trading or anything of the sort. These are just disclosure earnings and there are questions being raised about them. But there have been reports that President Trump is set to pardon anybody who comes within sort of touching distance of the Oval Office.
Yeah.
So bear that in mind too. So, yes, rightly the questions are being asked about the presidential disclosures today. The fact that they are public, I think, is also a very, very important aspect so that you can see the financial wealth of your leaders, see how it amassed, see what they have disclosed. This is why, you might remember all those years back, there was such a big push for him to disclose his tax returns and such big pressure on him then, the concern that perhaps he was way back as a presidential nominee evading taxes. But what you have here, yes, an element of transparency, but still significant questions around who's making the decisions, when are they being informed of various decisions, and how is this wealth being amassed so quickly?
Jonathan, I've got 2 World Cup stories to finish on. One of them's tragic, but the other one some people might find amusing. The Australian supporters at the World Cup have caused worldwide controversy. Let's have a listen to the chant. We're Aussies, we're on a bender. Donald Trump is a offender. Some people are finding it hilarious. And I also read that now Donald Trump's advisors are saying don't go to any of these football matches that are between English-speaking countries because the song will go off and it will offend the president. What's the latest with this? How's it going down, the Aussie chant?
Well, I mean, there's been a few of them. I saw some vision the other day of a whole bunch of them chanting in the bowels of the stadium that they're all getting deported. Now, they're obviously doing this in the light of free speech in the United States of America. There hasn't been any direct response from the White House in reaction to the Australian chants. There have been a lot of chants going up around the world, around the United States and the various venues, of course, during what has been fascinating FIFA World Cup of 2026. But, I mean, you've got to remember in this too, is that FIFA has banned effectively, the idea of political flags, political messages being taken inside World Cup venues. And you've seen protesting at Iranian matches, flying different flags outside, not allowed to take them inside. There has been a heightened sense of concern around some of this stuff. I don't think the White House is actually going to seriously respond to the idea of Australian chanting. They are clearly trying to make their voices heard about a very specific and divisive issue here in the United States, and that is, of course, what they are trying to allude to is the Epstein files, of which, of course, President Trump has said, he has never had any wrongdoing in his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. But nonetheless, there have been protests from Americans here inside the United States. So, yes, on one hand, you've had the Aussies chanting that, which raised a little bit of attention back home. And at the same time, you've had others chanting, we're all getting deported. They'll all say it's in the fun and frivolity of a FIFA World Cup, but it's a FIFA World Cup that's carrying a few political messages around it too.
It is. At least we haven't got that unbelievably annoying drone plastic instrument, the Vuvuzela. The Vuvuzela.
The Vuvuzela. That was one of the great highlights of this.
2010 South Africa.
One of the great highlights of the 2010 World Cup. That was brilliant.
It was terrible.
The Vuvuzela, I say.
It was absolutely appalling. How do you say it?
Vuvuzela.
The Vuvuzela. God, that was annoying. Listen, this is really, really sad. 3 people have died during World Cup celebrations in Mexico City. What's happened here?
Yeah, pretty tragic sort of set of circumstances. Obviously, Mexico was in the grips of celebrating what was an extraordinary win for them. Obviously, as one of the host nations, they are through to the round of 16 and will be playing England after England's very close victory against the Democratic Republic of Congo. That would have been a complete upset if that had happened and that England had not won that game. But yeah, you've had giant crowds in places like Mexico City, and what authorities are saying is, yes, 3 people have died from asphyxiation in Mexico City during the World Cup celebrations. In fact, that number has just risen to 4 now. So as I look at this now, so it's...
wow, terrible.
Yeah, look, it's concerning.
The pictures are horrifying.
It's tragic. It's tragic. Your fans being crushed in what is a place where there is a huge, giant throng of Mexicans celebrating their team doing an extraordinary thing on the world stage. And now there's a tinge of sadness for this team as they will be welcoming England into the Azteca Stadium in a matter of a week or so's time, with that aura of sadness hanging around them. But yes, look, sadly, 4 people at least have died from asphyxiation during the World Cup celebration.
The pictures are just horrific. All right, well, Australia playing Egypt, 4 a.m. Saturday, our time. What are they saying?
Well, this is going to be an exciting one, isn't it? Because, if Australia is to get through this stage, it is the first time Australia has won a knockout game. We all remember the heartbreak of Italy all those years ago with that dying minutes decision against Lucas Neal. One will that live on in the pain of Socceroos fans. Look, Egypt is going to be a tough opposition. Tony Popovic has taken his side into Dallas a day early. Obviously, there's a little bit of difference in trying to acclimatise to the heat between Oakland, where they have been, which is kind of ocean air. It's a bit sort of crisper, if you like. And then heading into a place like Dallas, I mean, you saw the conditions in Atlanta where the England team were playing them with closed, very, very hot conditions. I mean, you're looking at about 40 degrees or so. Dallas, it's, the air is going to be a lot different down there too. So, look, it's going to be hot. It's going to mean that the Socceroos players are going to have to spend an extra day trying to get used to those conditions, but it is going to be the victory that obviously they're going to be aiming for. It's going to be tough, though, beyond that, because you're looking at the likes of Argentina. If indeed Australia and Argentina both get through their games on Friday US time, Saturday morning Australian time. But either way, there will be thousands of Australians setting their alarms ridiculously early. What is it, 4 a.m. on the East Coast?
4 a.m. Saturday,
1 a.m. on the West Coast?
Yeah.
2 a.m. on the West Coast, whatever it is. It's going to be a very, very late Friday night or a very, very early Saturday morning for some. But anyway, let's hope those Socceroos can get the job done.
And licensed premises in New South Wales and Victoria being given some extra leeway. They're allowed to open and get the taps flowing. That'll be interesting.
Well, of course, the old early kickoff means the liquor licensing laws suddenly need a quick little bit of change. It's amazing how when it comes to that, all of a sudden the action can revert very, very quickly and we can kick in those bylaws that need to be kicked in and everybody can get out and enjoy the drink and have a fun, safe time, drink responsibly, wear the green and gold and just enjoy what is going to be a very special day.
Jonathan Kearsley, you're a star. I'll see you on Sky News tonight. Thank you so much.
Thanks, mate.
And laughter, they brighten my day. Got that bluesy rhythm, but it's swinging my way. Oh, I got the Luke Bona blues.
Folks, I've got to tell you something. At the last election, when Peter Dutton was hoping to lead the Liberal Party to victory, and it was exactly the opposite, but I'm disappointed that we didn't get the debate on Australia using nuclear power as a main source of energy. It was a promise made by the then coalition. I was looking forward to learning more. I was looking forward to a national debate over this really important issue. And then about a week before the election and during the election campaign, the whole topic was dropped. As I say, it disappointed me because I was looking forward to a national discussion over this topic. And it takes me back about 3 years now when I interviewed on the Triple M network a remarkable young man by the name of Will Shackle. Now, Will is the founder of Nuclear for Australia. But back then, I'm trying to remember, I'm pretty sure he would have been in year 11, and he was a very articulate advocate for a pro-nuclear debate. He is a pro-nuclear advocate. And he was saying at the time that small modular reactors can help solve Australia's climate and energy needs, and we need to talk about it. Well, as I say, really disappointed at the last election that this wasn't one of the topics of debate. And for some reason, the Liberal Party decided to drop it. But I think it's an important debate to have. And so, after 3 years, I've got Will Shackle, who's now in his second year at ANU. He's doing a Bachelor of Commerce degree. He is, as we speak, in Vienna. Can you believe it? He's in Vienna at the invitation of the International Atomic Agency. All of this. So, Will Shackle, 3 years down the track, here we are again. Thank you for joining us on the Bonafide podcast.
Great to see you, Luke.
Well, no, I'm having you. Well, maybe you are having me. I'm not sure. We had a couple of chats on the night shift on Triple M. I don't know whether you remember them or not because you were doing a lot of media at the time, but I really enjoyed it.
No, it was really good to be able to chat with you. And obviously there was a lot of interest in nuclear all those years ago. And it's great to still be having the conversation because I think right now is a really important time for the nuclear debate with everything happening with artificial intelligence, but particularly the developments we're seeing around the world. So it's an important conversation to have and, looking forward to our chat today.
Yeah, well, you're 20 now and your passion hasn't waned. A lot of people your age, and I shouldn't just narrow it down to your age, I think a lot of people are concerned about climate change, and we hear about renewables being the future. They're safe, they're cheap to run, it's good for the environment, etc., etc. However, they're not reliable and they're certainly not cheap. And I, like a lot of people would love to live off the grid. And I'd love to have panels on my roof and a battery that was safe. And whenever I'm in a blackout, my house can still power on. Two things in particular, the TV and the fridge. But I think we'd all love to be completely off the grid. And maybe down the track we'll get there, but renewables aren't ready yet. And so we don't have coal-fired power stations. We've let them go. We're shutting them down. And yet a majority of this country's energy does come from coal-fired power. Maybe you're a bit like me, disappointed that the Peter Dutton thought bubble on going nuclear wasn't a major source of discussion at the last election.
I really am. And, you only have to look at the energy market operators' recent projections that power demand in Australia is already so high, but is set to approximately double by 2050. So the challenge we're facing, Luke, about, where we're going to get our electricity is only increasing, and that's because of artificial intelligence, but also electrification, how we currently use our homes. I'm currently in Vienna, in Austria, where there's a massive heat wave. Everyone here's wondering how they're going to get their electricity to, power their air cons. Now, lucky for them, they're connected to the European grid here in Austria, and they can, import nuclear electricity from many European nations in our vicinity, including Switzerland, France. So they're very lucky in that position, but we're an island nation in Australia. We don't have the luck to be able to, run a big extension line to another country to import nuclear electricity. So we have to work out our power needs on land ourselves. Currently, we're limited to a series of options, mainly just renewables is the government's vision, and a bit of gas. But I think we should be exploring every clean energy option. And when we've got the most uranium in the world, we've got existing nuclear regulators, we've got decades of experience with a research reactor in the suburbs of Sydney producing life-saving nuclear medicines. Why wouldn't we, at least be considering nuclear power in the mix?
Actually, I think we're the second largest deposit of uranium in the world, but you're more of an expert on this than me. I've been told we're the second. But having said that, we export uranium for other countries to use nuclear power. We also export a shitload of coal for other countries to use coal for energy. But we seem to have demonized the whole thing here. Do you think that's hypocritical?
I think it is, yes. Australia's the first largest in terms of uranium reserves, but we're actually the fourth largest in terms of production. So there's a big gap between our potential and what we're currently doing, because the only state that currently exports uranium is South Australia. A lot of the other states either have policy bans or they have legislative bans. So, a good example is you've got WA, they've got significant uranium reserves, but they've currently got a policy ban in place. Queensland also has a policy ban. New South Wales, they have a legislative ban, so they're legally not able to even mine uranium in New South Wales. So, it's one thing to have prohibitions on nuclear power production, building plants, which is still pretty uncommon around the world. I think there's only 5 other countries. I think it's Austria, Ireland, Uruguay. I'm forgetting the other one, but there's very few countries in the Club of Australia with nuclear power bans. But we then go one step further and ban uranium mining in many jurisdictions around Australia. Now, that uranium we currently do export from South Australia, that's going to other countries to go into their nuclear power plants. And we're actually seeing a lot more demand at the moment because of all the investments other nations are making. So I think it's massively hypocritical that, Australia has all of this uranium. We're happy with the rest of the world using it. We're happy to then get uranium back to go into our nuclear submarines and our research reactor.
Yeah.
But we won't even have a conversation about nuclear power. And in addition to that, even though we do currently have a uranium export industry, there are some states who just sit on the sidelines and don't even take advantage of the opportunity under their own feet.
So just before we go on to your vision and that we look at the pros and cons of Australia going nuclear, what do you mean, what's the difference between a legislative ban and a policy ban?
So a policy ban is, say, Labor in Western Australia saying that in their platform, in their party platform, that they're opposed to uranium mining, which means that effectively if a private investor wants to establish a uranium mine in West Australia, there isn't going to be a minister who approves it because of their party position. Whereas a legislative ban, like we see in New South Wales, is in law. So, for example, they've got a nuclear power and uranium, a nuclear facilities and uranium mining prohibition that dates back to 1986. And that's actually written into legislation. Now, the positive thing in a state like New South Wales, and we're sort of seeing some action around the country, is we actually had a very successful vote a couple of weeks back, probably the biggest pro-nuclear vote in recent memory in the Legislative Council, the Upper House, to lift that prohibition. So that was, I guess, a really positive first step. And, I hope to see it lifted also in the lower house, the Legislative Assembly, at least the uranium mining part, because the fact that we've still got prohibitions like that is, like I said, absolutely crazy. We're the only G20 member which bans nuclear power, and these uranium mining prohibitions are just a separate crazy thing about our nuclear politics in Australia. I often say that Australia's got the most anti-nuclear laws in the entire world, despite so much going for us.
Have you thought to yourself why?
Well, yeah, it's a difficult question to
because I think I have an idea that, of course, the Greens hold the balance of power in a number of states and indeed federally, and they're obviously dead set against any form of nuclear, any power that isn't renewable based. But there is, I think, Will, and you jump on me if you think I'm wrong. This is about you, not me. But I think you look at disasters like Fukushima in Japan and Chernobyl and nuclear power stations going and creating death and havoc, and people are concerned that they're unstable and completely unsafe. And when that happens, like the Jane Fonda, Michael Douglas movie, the China Syndrome, it goes back there that these reactors, when they go wrong, are absolutely devastating, and people are nervous about that. We'll use that number one concern first. You get that?
I'd say so, but I think it just goes back to a general anti-nuclear ideology that we see in Australia. And, some of our leaders were born up in that, going to the anti-nuclear marches, whether it was for nuclear power, but also just more specifically weapons.
That's where Peter Garrett first dipped his toe into the political water, and he ran for the Senate as the anti-nuclear, and he didn't get up. To get into Parliament, he had to join the Labor Party. Another story.
Correct, and he's now, chairing this anti-AUKUS inquiry. But there's a long history. I'd say it's probably more around weapons, to be honest, because if you look at, some of the key unions, why they're opposed, such as the electrical trades unions, goes back to the weapons testing in Australia. And there was obviously a terrible history of some of those not peaceful uses of nuclear technology being used in Australia, mainly the weapons side of things. I would say in terms of safety, it shouldn't be as much of a concern, particularly for this Labor government, because they've just, they're investing hundreds of billions of dollars into floating nuclear reactors in the form of the AUKUS nuclear-powered submarines. If it was indeed nuclear safety, which they were worried about, then why are they investing so much in these submarines and willing to put our submariners in them? And I would argue that nuclear power is one of the safest energy sources. You look statistically, nuclear power is the second safest energy source, factoring in those incidents. And obviously the real human repercussions they did have. I would note that many people don't realise that, in the case of 3 Mile Island, no one was actually harmed from the radiation there. No one died from the radiation, according to the Department of Energy in the United States. But in addition to that, you look at Fukushima, a disaster that many people would have recalled recently, and again, no one died from radiation in that incident. Chernobyl is, of course, a different story, a terrible, tragic accident in the Soviet Union in the 1980s, and there's a lot learned by the nuclear industry. But I think the good thing, the positive thing for this world is that since then, nuclear safety and regulation has come a long way. And nuclear power, I think, has been part of the solution. There's actually a NASA statistic which shows that because of prevented air pollution deaths, nuclear has actually saved 1.84 million lives around the world. And I think that's a really positive contribution that it's made to preserving humanity, because it provides a source of clean air. But yeah, in terms of I guess why we have these issues in Australia. And like I said, I believe we've got the most anti-nuclear laws in the world. It confuses me daily, but I would say it's probably more to do with the weapons side of things and, the non-proliferation argument.
And non-proliferation, I get that. And also nuclear testing, which over the years it's been appalling. You look at the French nuclear testing at Muir Atoll, and even before then, and I've interviewed Frank Walker on this. He wrote an amazing book called Maralinga, and how the British were testing nuclear weapons in the middle of Australia with the AOK of the then Prime Minister, who without even going to the party room, Robert Menzies said, yes, test away. And it left a very bad taste in Australia's mouth, and rightly so. But getting back to, so you need a watertight system somehow, that if you're going to use uranium only for nuclear power, you cannot let it get into the hands of a country that's going to develop nuclear weapons. And I think the public don't trust politicians.
Well, the good thing is we have, existing regulators to make sure this happens. We've got the Australian Nuclear Safeguards Office, which is one of our nuclear regulators, and they have to make sure that all of Australia's uranium is going to countries which use it for peaceful purposes, whether it's, nuclear medicine production, nuclear power production, and it's tracked all around the world. One of the other agencies which are responsible for it, and this is where my conference is at in Vienna, is the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is a UN organisation which is responsible for all things nuclear. And one of that is nuclear safeguards, making sure nuclear material does not end up in weapons where it's not meant to. And, they're actually involved currently with tracking where Australia's uranium goes and making sure it's only for those peaceful purposes. And that's been happening for a very long time now. A lot of people probably have heard about the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, because of what's happening at the moment with Iran and their enrichment. And there's been talk about, the IAEA doing inspections of those facilities. And, the IAEA is a very trusted organisation, which used to be responsible for the testing that happened in Iran. So, you've also got the Iran regime that trusts them as well, in addition to all of these countries around the world. So I think there's a really strong regime at the moment that is in place to ensure nuclear material doesn't end up in the wrong hands. Obviously, when you restrict the IAEA from doing their work like the Iran regime is doing at the moment, then that makes things difficult. But I guess the issues with that are on the public record. But Australia already has existing relationships to make sure our uranium, at least, doesn't end up in the wrong hands. And I think, frankly, that's the government's probably very sensitive about that, given what was happening with the weapons testing, which I think was a really tragic way to be using nuclear science and technology in Australia when we had much better peaceful options, which still are not being used to this day, unfortunately.
We'll go through the list of countries that use nuclear power for energy, but it's always made me kind of scratch my head that the United States and Israel are concentrating on Iran having nuclear weapons when you also have, well, let's have a look at some of the countries that have nuclear weapons. The United States, obviously. Russia, who has invaded the Ukraine. You've got China. You've got France. You've got the United Kingdom. You've got Pakistan. You've got North Korea. You've got Israel and India. All with nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons. And some could successfully argue that a lot of those countries are volatile. and that we should be concerned about every country having nuclear weapons. They would argue having nuclear weapons is the best defence because it's a threat. They're more as a defensive mechanism than an offensive mechanism. But it does make the world a nervous place, and here we are worrying about Iran. What about Russia and North Korea, for Christ's sake? And India and Pakistan, which are like this, they're both nuked to the teeth.
Well, yeah, and I certainly, to make it super clear for people, Nuclear for Australia, myself, I'm only for the peaceful applications of nuclear. I think Australia's uranium shouldn't be going to any of these countries building up their programs. Like, I think the US has got in the thousands of nuclear weapons. Like, you look at the nuclear arsenal around the world, if that was ever used in full, I think we'd be done for pretty easily, probably when they got through, the low percentages of those stockpiles. So I think it's, quite absurd. You can obviously understand the argument about protection with nuclear weapons, but I don't think Australia should go down that path. And around the world, I think, there should be a de-escalation where, there's less weapons. The fact there's build-up is absolutely crazy at the moment.
The reason I bring that up is I'm talking about some of the fears that are in people's minds about the use of uranium. But let's go back to something you said earlier about the rest of the world, countries that use nuclear power. And the United States is the largest. It's not a European country, but the United States is the world's largest producer of nuclear energy by far, about 94 operational reactors generating about 20% of the nation's electricity. And you look at their population, that's a large amount. But there are 31 countries worldwide that use nuclear power. China's the next. Russia, South Korea, France, Slovakia, Belgium, Hungary, Ukraine, Finland, Sweden, Switzerland, Czech Republic, Romania, Spain, and the list goes on and on and on. Just because there are so many countries that use nuclear energy, does that mean Australia should therefore follow suit? Because I want to go through let's go through some of the cons. These are the arguments. These are the common arguments that listeners come to me with via email or phone calls I've had over the years, and let's address them one by one, can we?
Of course.
To manufacture and create a nuclear reactor to generate nuclear power takes a hell of a lot of money, enormous capital, and it takes a long time. Shall we go through that one first?
Yeah, and it's certainly a big argument. I'd say just first on your point about other countries, I think it is important for Australia to, look at their example. There are, like you said, over 30 countries who use nuclear, around 60 who are exploring
31.
it for the
31.
first time. Yeah, 31. It's an enormous number. Many countries, people wouldn't even think of needing nuclear power, use it. And I think it just proves that, there are lots of countries in a similar position to Australia where it stacks up. But let's get to the criticisms of people who have...
Number one is it costs a hell of a lot of money to make a nuclear reactor and to maintain it.
Yes.
Same thing with fuel refineries, same thing with coal-fired power stations. They all take a lot of capital, a lot of maintenance, and they don't happen overnight. But we're staying with nuclear energy. The high cost and the time it takes to make one.
Nuclear power is expensive to build but produces cheap electricity compared to renewables, which are cheap to build but produce expensive electricity. And I think it's, it wouldn't be fair for me to come on your show, Luke, and say that, nuclear power plants are, cheap and quick to build, particularly when you look at the experience of the West recently. There are some countries that get it right. South Korea, which is able to, say, deploy quickly and efficiently. Russia and China, obviously not in a similar position to us. We wouldn't be partnering with them on a program, perhaps South Korea. But the fact is that recently large reactors in the West have been very expensive to build and have gone over time. There's certainly been a lot of lessons learned from that, because that has been, in basically all of those cases, first-of-a-kind reactors being deployed, these modern reactors which, learn from the lessons of Fukushima, 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl. So, they've now been demonstrated, which is a good thing, and certainly a lot of lessons to learn, but I don't think we can get past the fact that, those large reactor constructions have been expensive and have taken a long time to build. Whilst that is said, I don't think that's a reason to ignore nuclear power, and there's a few reasons for that. First of all, nuclear power is a long-term generational investment. A nuclear power plant can last, from 80 to potentially over 100 years compared to other energy sources. Renewables maybe around 20 to 30, coal plant maybe around 60. They're built to such a high standard And what that means is in the period of time you're having to replace those solar panels, all those wind turbines, you've got a nuclear power plant which is running, producing electricity. And whilst you do have that high upfront cost for the reactor itself, all of the associated concrete in the nuclear power plant, the operational costs are incredibly low. Main reason for that is the fuel costs. You require so little uranium in a nuclear reactor to produce so much electricity that you're not having to pay a high operational long-term cost for the fuel, which is what many people forget about. So there's that long-term economic impact. And when you study it over that long-term impact, that's when the real case for nuclear starts to stack up. Also, I'd just say, in terms of that timepiece, then, again, you look at 80 to 100 years. Yes, it might take some time at the start, but I think it's a generational impact that is worth having. That's with large reactors. We also there are many different kinds of nuclear reactors. They come in all shapes and sizes, different fuels, et cetera, But what we're seeing at the moment is also a rise in small and micro reactors. So whereas a large nuclear reactor produces 1,000 megawatts, and that's about enough to power 1 million homes. These days, we have nuclear reactors which are being developed and currently under construction to produce anywhere from, around 300 megawatts for small modular reactors, many people have probably heard about, to, 1 to 10 megawatts in the case of a microreactor. Now, with both of these advanced, smaller nuclear technologies, what we're seeing is that private companies are able to invest in them, which I think is a really positive sign because they've got a lower upfront cost than traditional large nuclear power plants. So recently, a lot of the tech companies have been investing in these small reactors.
I'm going to let you keep going, but I've got to say here, the moment you privatise a utility, whether it be water, electricity, whatever, it worries me. Because because these private companies want a return. You look at our toll roads, just in Sydney, our toll roads, which have been privatised, they charge a fortune, and you've got no option but to use them. And I it's only my opinion. I think the people should own these utilities that are necessary: water, electricity, transport, our roads. It worries me when you privatise them, because then you'll be charged through the roof. And these companies will say, we have every right to. We put up the money. We built the bloody thing. We'll charge you what we want. And that worries me.
I'd briefly just say, a lot of the nuclear plants around the world use public-private partnerships. And it's also important to emphasise that government in regulation will always be there with the nuclear industry. But I think that's a fair point.
Well, a private entity is not going to take on a project like this unless they can get some good folding out of it, not only at the end, but for years down the track, they'll want their profit. And that's why it worries me. But we'll move on. We agree it's a high price, but your argument is it's worth it in the long run. It's infrastructure that we're going to need for the future of Australia. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. That's what you're saying. Okay.
Yes.
Here's something else, and you can explain this to me, because no one yet has successfully been able to do it. I think a lot of folks are concerned about the radioactive waste. How much, try and help me here. If you had a nuclear reactor that could power, let's just say Sydney, the population of Sydney, 5.6 million people, how much waste is that going to create? Now, is it a shoebox? Is it an Olympic swimming pool? Is it a B-double? I don't know. I think it's a reasonable question. I am a dumbass. It's a reasonable question, isn't it?
Yeah. No, it certainly is a reasonable question. And, I wouldn't say many people probably in Australia do know. So, in terms of the nuclear radioactive waste.
Okay, so we've got a nuclear reactor. We're producing nuclear power for Sydney, 5.6 million. How much waste?
Yep. I think specifically what's important to talk about here is the spent fuel. This is what people are actually concerned about when it comes to radioactive waste. The high radioactivity spent fuel that comes out of a nuclear reactor, how much of that's produced, because there are different kinds of radioactive waste, even going down to things like gloves. Now, Australia already manages that, so I'll sort of park that to a side and just focus on the spent fuel itself. To give you a specific analogy, because I don't know the specific numbers, say for Sydney, but you can sort of extrapolate this out. If you look at the amount of nuclear fuel that would be needed to power someone over their entire lifetime, it'd be equivalent to the size of about a Coke can worth of uranium. So you can
Coke can of waste for someone who lives to 90.
Correct. Now, when you look at
85.
all of the high-level radioactive waste, this spent nuclear fuel that we're talking about, that's been produced in the history of nuclear power, which is, around 10% of the world's electricity over all lifetime, that could all fit inside a stadium. So in terms of Australia's actual waste that would be produced, say from Sydney alone, I'd imagine it would be able to fit inside, a room. You look at Switzerland, I think Switzerland, they've got a facility, and there's a really good image that people can Google of this.
Yeah, what is it? I'll Google it. What is it?
Switzerland's got a waste facility. It's contained all of their waste for a few decades, and it's a relatively small room. So, how this spent fuel, high-level radioactive waste is actually managed is you initially have to put it into cooling pools on the reactor. So next to the reactor, you've got a spent fuel cooling pool is what they're called. Yeah. And, I've actually been and walked around these pools because the cool thing about water is it traps the radiation. So, a few meters of water can protect you from all of that high level of radiation. And I've walked around these pools at Sizewell B in the UK. So you'd put it in there first for a couple of years to cool down. And then you've got a few options. It's a very small amount of water. So that's a whole separate discussion about water use. The main use of water in nuclear power plants actually condensing the steam back into water, which is in a separate cycle for the sake of the turbine. Like that amount of water for the spent fuel cooling pools is incredibly small amount. You could chuck it in. Once you have them in the spent fuel cooling pools, you can, put them into dry cast storage, which is basically these reinforced concrete canisters, and you can hug these. I've hugged one of these dry cast storage canisters before, and it's completely safe. Actually, I had less radiation in that room than I did outside because of the sun. You can do that. A lot of countries do that because that's sort of the temporary measure. But there are then other options. You can reprocess your spent nuclear fuel, which is actually what Australia does, because Australia has spent fuel from our research reactor producing those nuclear medicines. We send that spent fuel to France to recycle. And part of that process is France is generating electricity from parts of our spent fuel. You can do that. It is an expensive upfront cost to build those facilities. So it would have to be an investment Australia would need to consider whether that stacks up. But the last option is to put this spent fuel into deep geological repositories. Now that basically means putting these nuclear fuel assemblies into canisters and sealing them hundreds of meters underground under stable geology. Now there are such facilities around the world. Currently Finland is on the brink of opening theirs. They're currently testing it. The facility is called Onkalo, but Australia is going to actually have one of these facilities for the spent nuclear fuel from our AUKUS nuclear submarine program. So Australia is going to have to build one of these facilities and it's going to have to deal with spent nuclear fuel one way or another. But I think the important thing is that the volume of spent nuclear fuel that we're talking about with a civil nuclear program is incredibly small, particularly when you compare it to other energy sources. Think about, the amount of solar panels that you need to power yourself over your lifetime. Only some of them are recycled at the moment. The economic case doesn't really stack up. Wind turbines, think about the number of those that you need. Even, when it comes to fossil fuels, the waste that's emitted into the air that we have to breathe in. The good thing with the nuclear industry is at least they have to be responsible for the waste that they manage. It is costed into the upfront cost of a nuclear power plant. And I'd say the last thing is that Australia does, we've got the Australian Radioactive Waste Agency. We have proven pathways for the low and intermediate level waste. So I think it's, certainly a topic that comes up in public conversation, but it's really I think a political issue, not a technical one. There are technical solutions for nuclear waste management, but at the end of the day, the public will always be concerned about radioactive waste. Just need to make sure that the solutions for that are found in consultation with the public. The technical case is, well articulated.
Okay, I'll tell you one more massive road hump, and that's going to be no one is going to want a nuclear reactor anywhere near their home because they're initially going to go, you're kidding, what? Yeah. Or no one is going to want to live anywhere near nuclear waste. No matter how far underground it is, and no matter how many concrete lead containers it's in, I don't think the public are going to go for it. No one's going to want to live near it.
Well, I'll clear this up first. I'd be happy to have a nuclear power plant in my backyard. I'm not concerned. But
you're a nuclear waste hugger.
I am.
You got some people who are tree huggers. You're a nuclear waste hugger.
Yeah, I guess I'm unique for multiple reasons. I am a nuclear waste hugger.
Jesus.
Look, I would say, yeah, I'm not on a campaign to make everyone in Australia a nuclear waste hugger. And the good thing is you don't need many nuclear power plants. You don't have to have them in people's backyards to produce the amount of electricity that Australia would need. We don't need 94 reactors like the United States. But in terms of the NIMBYism argument, it's a fair point. You know, I would agree with you before the election, but what we witnessed is we visited a lot of the communities which had proposed nuclear power plants by the coalition, and these were all coal communities where they had existing or retired coal power plants. The interesting thing when we visited them, we expected to have a lot of community pushback. The coalition was doing a pretty bad job engaging these communities, and we were basically holding these information evenings which were completely free with nuclear experts just chatting about what nuclear would mean in these communities. And sure, we had like a couple of protesters, but for the most part, these communities were asking, how can we sign up? They were supportive. And that might come as a bit of a shock to people, but you have to remember these are communities which have lived with thermal power generating units, coal-fired power plants. And when they saw a nuclear power plant, which has a very similar structure, you know, has a steam turbine, has cooling towers, basically, you know, it doesn't have furnace to burn the coal, it has a nuclear reactor, but there are a ton of similarities. And they're already used to large energy infrastructure. So for them, when they heard about nuclear power in their communities, they saw something that they could sort of already understand that would provide a long-term impact in those communities, which wanted to have long-term generational jobs, economic benefits, and there's no better power source than nuclear power for that. So what then happened during the election, not many people noticed this, but there was actually strong swings in some of these seats towards the coalition against their average vote. You look at Collie, I heard of some booths near the nuclear power plant proposed there in Western Australia having a 20% swing towards the coalition, the candidate there, Rick Wilson. So you're seeing very, very strong support in these communities. And certainly there were people in these communities, do not get me wrong, that were opposed to having nuclear power. A lot of the protesters, to be honest, had actually come in from the cities and travelled out, because that's where most of the opposition to nuclear power is, not in the regions. We have our most support in the regions. This stacks up as well with the international statistics. The closer you are to a nuclear power plant, the more favourable you are to it, because you live near one, you understand it, makes sense.
But you see, you'll have politicians who will idealistically love this idea, but when it comes to facing their electorate and saying there's going to be a nuclear power plant here and a radiation storage plant here, their electorates will go ape shit and they'll lose their seats. I think that's the fear, and I think that's why Dutton dropped it. It was a promise it would come up for debate at the last election. It wasn't, and then the Liberal Party dropped it as policy after the defeat. And I can only say that they've done focus groups. I keep saying this. It was a flight kiteing exercise. The kite went up. It blew in the wrong direction. They thought, nah, we'll drop this idea. So I think it's going to take a fair bit to get across the line. The other reason is when you've got the states making these decisions, some of them policy, some of them, one of them legislative, which is written in law. It's maybe it should become a federal portfolio, and maybe it will take a referendum. I don't know, but it's an interesting debate. So the last argument I hear, and you're used to this, is the safety issue. Now, modern plants, I know, have advanced safety protocols. Now, but accident can still be catastrophic. But you want to be able to have a nuclear reactor in a country that is geologically stable. And are we that stable?
Well, I'd say we are. We don't have any tectonic boundaries going through Australia. So from an earthquake risk, and I'd say we're really well placed. You know, there are countries who do manage active nuclear power plants to this day on the Ring of Fire. You know, in Japan, you've even got, you know, nuclear power plant Diablo Canyon, which is on the coast of California, right on the Ring of Fire. And that's just had its license renewed by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission there in the US, because nuclear power plants are built to withstand earthquakes, even in our research reactor. So I think in terms of that concern with nuclear safety, Australia is, you know, in a very good position. You know, we would still have to engineer it for even those small shocks that we experience in Australia, but nuclear power plants are built to withstand much more significant shocks. And like I said, nuclear power is the second safest energy source. When I go to nuclear power plants, they shout at me if I don't have 2 points of contact when I'm visiting these facilities. The safety culture, when they talk about nuclear power, is definitely real. Goes down to, everything from, making sure you're looking up when you're crossing the road to having, your 2 points of contact walking through one of those facilities. But, I've also been into control rooms of nuclear power plants and the professionalism of those people operating the nuclear power plants. The level of training that they have to receive is truly impressive. And then you've got the external regulation as an additional layer on top of that, which Australia already has the capability for. So, I think nuclear safety is always going to be a major concern, particularly when we see some of those historical accidents. But I'm not, it's not a concern that I think should stop us from having nuclear power in Australia. There is no free lunches when it comes to energy in Australia. There are other energy sources which also cause a tremendous amount of safety concerns, which are much higher than nuclear power, particularly thinking of fossil fuels, even hydro. There's been some terrible accidents with hydropower, but we don't say that we shouldn't have hydroelectric dams around the world because of those accidents. They've been learnt from, and there's been safety advancements. So I think it's, important conversation to have, but it shouldn't be a non-starter to nuclear in Australia.
Will Shackle, we've nearly run out of time, but I want to get you back.
Yeah.
And from a couple of times we've done this successfully. We've done the Bonafide podcast live, and it'd be great to have you on one of our live shows where we could take calls.
Yep.
And you could answer people's questions. How about we work on doing that? So, Will, I once again, not putting words into your mouth, but to wrap up, the pros, zero carbon emissions, high reliability, and after the initial cost of building these things, lower running costs than a coal-fired power station or even building new oil refineries. So after it's all done, after the initial cost, low running costs, you believe they are safe, and everyone's concerned about the environment. You're saying zero carbon emissions.
And low land use, high jobs. I could go on all day, Luke, and I'm sure that, if we're able to have another program live, the questions could probably go for all day because many people are curious about nuclear power. But I think there's a host of reasons Australia should explore nuclear. There are many countries that have nuclear power which have proven that nuclear power stacks up for them. There's a reason why we've got more than 60 countries, including many in our region, Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, all considering nuclear power at the moment in their energy mix. There are 38 countries representing 70% of global GDP, including the world's biggest economies, Canada, US, UK, China, all signed up to triple nuclear power globally by 2050. This is, a conversation that Australia needs to have. Should have had a long time ago. But I think that, the more that we talk about, lifting the ban, the better, because nuclear has to be inevitable in Australia. We need to catch up with the rest of the world, particularly with the energy concerns we have at the moment in this country. And I think that...
And the environmental concerns.
Exactly.
I agree. It's a topic we need to discuss, and that's why we're doing that today. I'm disappointed that the coalition, the Liberal Party, dropped it even before the election, just before. It wasn't debated during the election. And then after the defeat, dropped it completely. I think it is a conversation we need to have. I've got a completely open mind. I need to be educated. And William, I can't believe it. You're 20 now. You were 16 when we first met. And here you are, second year at ANU. And here you are in Vienna as a guest of the International Atomic Agency, about to give a speech and address the new safety conference. It's just remarkable. It's been a pleasure, a serious pleasure to talk to you again, and enjoy your time in hot Vienna. Who would have thought hot Vienna?
Yeah.
And we'll talk to you when you get back. I really appreciate you I know you're tired and you've got a big day tomorrow, but I appreciate you putting some time aside to help us continue this important debate.
Anytime, Luke. I really do appreciate you having this conversation with your audience, and I'll come on anytime to chat about it more.
There he is. Unbelievable, eh? Will Shackle, 20 years of age, who a number of years ago was the sole founder of Nuclear for Australia. And you just type in Will Shackle, Nuclear Australia, or Nuclear for Australia, and you'll read all there is to read about. And I'm trying to keep an open mind, because I do worry about the environment. I do worry about the future of Australia's energy supply. And we have so much uranium and we sell it to countries who are going nuclear, but we don't use it ourselves. Anyway, let us know in our comments what you make of this so far. And if we do get Will Shackle back on, and we will, what would your question be? You can either email us, leave us a voice message, and if we do go live with Will, we'll let you know when. We'll give you plenty of warning, and you can ring up and ask a question. Will Shackle once again. Thank you.
It's the Bonafide crew, talking truth from the cab, stories from the blacktop.
Here comes McKnight tonight. I need a copy of your jingle, Rob McKnight, radio producer, radio, television and media expert. Loving your podcast, Rob McKnight tonight. G'day, buddy.
Oh, you're very kind, mate. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much.
We need a boner jingle. He's a loner. He's a boner.
Geez, I wonder what else you could do with boner.
Well, I did breakfast on 2SM for 6 days a little while ago, you might remember, sitting in for Timmy Webster. And we said, wake up with a boner. And it worked. It worked. Hey, listen.
Do you know what? People like that. People like a double entendre. You know, even the most conservative people, they don't mind it. It's when you become explicit and when there's no double edge to it. That's when people get upset.
Listen, there's a bit to get through and we haven't got much time. I am actually going to have a longer chat with you, maybe next week, and it's going to be all about you. You're going to be very uncomfortable. But I want to talk
subject. No.
Yeah, I know. But your amazing career, executive producer. I mean, the project. I mean, the things you have done. There's so much more to you than meets the eye. And I want to do that. But today, let's talk about a topic that you were 3,000,000% correct on, and that is that Carl Stefanovic's radio gig on ARN with Eddie Maguire will not go ahead. You said that nearly 2 weeks ago. And is it because of the mad effing witches? ARN, have they got scared? Interesting to note that the ratings of the Today Show since Carl left have plummeted. So, Rob McKnight, media expert, your reflection on all of this so far?
Yeah, so it was really obvious that ARN was going to part ways with Carl. And the moment I knew that was when they released that statement distancing themselves from him and the podcast. I think I may have said it here. I certainly said it on McKnight Tonight. I replayed it last night. The fact was that as soon as they released that statement, I knew this was not going to continue because Michael Stevenson, the CEO of ARN, has said that the Mad Witches campaign against Carl and Jackie O, it's funny, like you, I get confused with my Carls and Carls.
Yeah.
It's similar.
See, that's why you're safe with the last name Bona. You're very safe.
And basically what we're seeing is that the Mad Witches campaign, they were talking about doing a cancel Carl and cancel with a K. So it was Cancel Carl campaign. ARN have already said that they lost $25 million in revenue because of their campaign against Carl and Jackie O. So the moment they released that statement, I went, he's never going to return to that show. And sure enough, look, Eddie wanted the big interview. Eddie wanted the interview with Carl to be able to have his side of the story. I don't think that'll happen. And I don't think, and I said, he will never return to that show. That has borne out. What is interesting is there are reports that Carl Sandilands is talking about teaming up with Carl. And if you think we're having the problem, Carl and Carl, talk about a match that's going to be confusing, but it's a smart play if they do it.
How would they do it?
So Carl's launching a streaming service. So I assume part of his play would be to get Carl as part of that. I don't know if it's the right play for Carl, though, because Carl has already cemented 100,000 subscribers and more on YouTube. He's got his own brand. Kyle is only about to start up behind a paid streaming service, which I think he will do well at, by the way. He says he only needs 50,000 people to be successful. He had an audience of, 800,000 people? So I reckon he'd be close to being able to do that, to get people who really miss him to pay for it. But the thing is, what do they both want? Kyle does face some challenges in that doing a streaming service behind a paid wall. It's a separate website. It's not just using YouTube. You know, we can go to YouTube very easily. I stream to YouTube for nothing. and YouTube gives me money in terms of advertising. But when you start up a paid subscription service, you've got to build infrastructure. You've got to have redundancy. What kind of cameras are you using? So there's all that infrastructure. And don't forget, under the terms of the deal ARN did with Kyle, ARN gets 19% of the profits for the first 3 years.
That's right. It's a long way from his $2 million check at Channel 9. Maybe he doesn't need the money. I don't know. Being a
You always need the money.
You do, but what's happened at the Today Show? Their audience has just dropped off.
Yeah, well, look, one of my criticisms about the Today Show has been that the show has never really evolved. It's been a copycat of Sunrise, but it's all hung on the likability of Carl. And when they took him off last time, the ratings plummeted when they put Georgie Garden and Deb Knight on together, and they brought him back. It's not a shock to me that they have fallen so quickly because it's been front page news. And so Sunrise are getting figures of around 450,000 viewers across Australia. The Today Show on Monday got something like 265, and that dropped to 230 on Tuesday. And that literally does show you that he was the show. So what producers of the Today Show have to do, and I've been banging on about this, I did an article in 2019 saying the Today Show needs to change its format. I would suggest trying to do something very different from Sunrise. Sunrise does Sunrise very well. Today is Sunrise Light. And so the Today Show producers need to rethink the format and try something completely different to try and be competitive against that format.
But Channel 9 was the king of breakfast TV. Sunrise came after, I think, and even Channel 10 had a breakfast show, I remember, and Timmy Bailey.
Good Morning Australia. You've got to remember the Today Show back then.
Liz Hayes and Steve Lieben, they're my memories.
That's right. You know, it was a very well done show, but Sunrise came along and in the early noughties started playing with the format and didn't take itself so serious. The Today Show had laughs, but it was a serious show. The Sunrise came along and said, we're going to have a bit of fun. We're going to give you some opinions. Viewers started connecting with Mel and Koshy. And then that forced the Today Show to change because it was no longer number one. And so it changed hosts, it changed its format, and it really has been a copycat of Sunrise. You can't dispute that. It has copied the Sunrise format.
Yeah, I go back to Chris Reason, who was the original co-host. He got testicular cancer. He's a good mate, right. and I think he's an outstanding journalist. And they got the finance guy to fill in, and the finance guy worked out well.
Yeah, never take holidays or get sick. But
No.
Rizzo is one of those really good guys in television, and I have a lot of time for Rizzo. And, travels the world. But you know what? As much as I love him, I think he is the ultimate reporter. I don't like him in the studio as much as I like him on in the field. Like when he's at war zones, he's the guy I want to hear from.
Yeah.
He's the guy I want telling me the story. I actually don't want him in the studio. Now, of course, every reporter wants to be the anchor and host the 6 p.m. news. He's fine, but his strength is telling me a story. And that's why, to me, I think it worked out better. He's still around. He's got longevity. When you're in those high positions, you can come and go very quickly.
What happened to Richard Wilkins, who was the golden boy of Channel 9 for a long time? And I look at Sunrise because, I'm involved with Sunrise.
Yep.
And they're constantly got people in the background that could fill in. David Woywood does a very good job on weekends, and he's a good newsreader. Hugh Whitfield, who is also a good mate, was based in the UK. He's out here now. And you've got
I just want to call one of them a dickhead because you like them all so much, but I like them too.
Well, there's plenty of dickheads. We can have a dickhead-a-thon if you want. And
no, the people you're mentioning, and here's the thing about Sunrise, there's always a succession plan, right?
Monique Wright.
Oh, who I absolutely love. The thing about Sunrise is that when Sam Armitage took over from Mel Doyle, the viewers went, yeah, that makes sense. When Nat took over from Sam, yeah, that makes sense. When Matt Shervington took over from Koshy, while that wasn't the most obvious, it wasn't such a shock because he'd been doing it. They'd basically been lining him up. With the Today Show, you've asked me, who's going to take over from Carl? I have no bloody idea.
Neither do they.
Because they have no succession plan. And what gets me even more, Luke, is that They have known for a while whether it was his decision, Carl saying it was his decision on that interview with Piers Morgan, whether it was his decision or not. They've known for some time that he wouldn't be going into 2027, and yet they still don't know who's going to replace him.
Unbelievable, isn't it? Listen, I want to, with your permission, play a little bit from Rob McKnight last night and Daryl Summers. I just want to play, with your permission, a little bit, because I want people to go back and watch.
No. Of course you can.
I want people to go and watch the whole thing. Rob McKnight, to just get it on YouTube. Tell me about this list of Australia's greatest TV shows, where this list came from, the purpose of the list, and why the hell was Hey Hey It's Saturday not on it?
Yeah, this is crazy. So TV Week are doing a top 70 Aussie TV shows of all time to celebrate 70 years of TV. Fantastic. They've done a short list of 140, and for some unknown reason, Hey Hey It's Saturday wasn't included. And look, Daryl's upset about it.
It's in the castle. They talk about it in the Gong him red.
Well, Daryl's won 3 gold Logies. How many Logies has Hey Hey won? So it's really, really bizarre. And some of my viewers have said, oh, it's wokeism. They think the TV Week ignored it because it's not cool to like Hey Hey anymore because the woke brigade have stepped in. But look, he doesn't do many interviews these days. And
that was a great get, Rob. It was a great get.
Well, Jill, my producer, I have one producer who helps me out. She helps me organise some interviews. She got it for me, and then Daryl and I were talking on the phone. It was a thrill to speak to him, but he's upset about it. Here's what he said about it. Time to fess up. How did you really feel about TV Week leaving Hey Hey off the shortlist?
Bewildered. I honestly bewildered. I thought maybe it's a PR stunt that you take something obvious off the list and it'll create controversy and therefore give them more publicity for their list. I would dearly love to know the real reason why we're not included. We have not been on since 2010, yet we have, a couple of years ago, we were like 500,000 or so Facebook followers. We are now over 800,000 Facebook followers. And I don't know how many of them knew about the TV Week survey.
I mean, I'm a Daryl Summers massive fan. Did you know he was a drummer? And
if you've ever watched Hey Hey It's Saturday, you know he's a drummer.
He was a drummer, but I used to watch it on Saturday mornings after Thunderbirds.
Yes.
And it was basically a cartoon show. But then it evolved and got a little bit risque, and they put it on at night and it exploded.
Could you imagine a programmer these days going, oh, we've got this kid show in the morning, we're going to turn that into a primetime show?
Never.
It just wouldn't happen. And that is the thing that's missing from TV. But in that interview, he also revealed that they're launching a new streaming service for Hey Hey It's Saturday. Now, they have the heyhey.tv where you can watch old episodes, but this sounds like it's going to be ramped up a lot with new hosting links. He's going to film all these new things. He's going to tell stories about behind the scenes, how certain shows came up, what happened with certain stories. And he's also going to launch a theatre production of Hey Hey, where basically he's going to have a giant LED screen, a band, special guests live, but show old classic clips from the show. He's not slowing down, that's for sure.
When they brought it back for a while, we were hosting some Americans from Chicago. It was a foreign exchange. Nikki's daughter went there, and then the family that hosted her, he came here. And Hey Hey came back. They made a comeback. And I said, guys, you've got to watch this show. They're in year 12, right? They're in year 12. I'm watching it, and Nikki and I are laughing. It was great to have it back. There's nothing like nostalgia. And these kids, straight-faced.
They didn't laugh.
They didn't get it.
It's funny, isn't it? Because Saturday nights, whether you were at home or whether you were catching up with friends, Hey Hey would always be on in the corner, and it really was a part of Australian culture, which makes the snub from TV Week all the more bizarre. I can tell Daryl is hurt by it. He's trying to be diplomatic, but I didn't take him to task, but I did call him out in a nice way for being too nice about it, because I'm pissed off about it. And I just think it's really not doing Australian television a service if you're missing such an obvious show like that. The thing about the show is that when American actors came out, they'd see this show and there's Dickie Knee, there's an ostrich sitting there. And with the ostrich, and I talked to Daryl about this, Ernie Carroll literally sat on the desk. He didn't do a Jamie Dunn under the desk. He literally sat at the desk and the camera just framed him out while he had his hand up. Aussie Ostrich. It is funny because in an episode of Studio 10, we had John Blackman on, and he had Dickie Knee, and we convinced him to turn Dickie Knee around and show us, and it's just black gaffer tape. There's no eyes or anything.
Yeah.
So imagine you're Sylvester Stallone, and there's classic clips and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
This little head pops up, and you're literally looking at a cap, some hair over, and just a black face. And when you see Dickie Knee front on, it is surreal because obviously we've all seen the back of his head, but when you see him front on, it's crazy.
Absolutely. And then Angel, which was also Blackman's voice. Gee, I love John Blackman. When I was on 3AW, John Blackman at one point was doing breakfast, and he used to ring my program on his way to work, and we had the greatest chats. Oh, it was such a privilege. John Blackman's ringing me on the air for a chat.
He just loved the medium. He loved it. He loved radio. He loved television. And I think what you saw with Hey Hey, Luke, and with John calling into you like that is a love of what they did.
100%.
That's why the viewers loved it, because we connected. You know, like I said to Daryl in a phone call that Studio 10 was essentially my version of Hey Hey, It's Saturday. It wasn't a copy, but there were elements. You know, we would speak to the crew. If something happened, we didn't ignore it. We went with it. Yes, it was a news-based program because we were talking hot topics, but I also tried to turn it into a morning variety show. And that's why it was having rating success, is because it was different to the other offerings, which brings me back to what we were talking about with the Today Show. They need to do something different.
Yeah, Studio 10, I enjoyed it. Thanks for asking me on, bastard.
I didn't know you then.
I would have been exceptional.
I would have. If I could turn back time, I can't tell you so many people, so many...
have said Luke Bona should have been on Studio 10.
They have. But celebrities have said to me, you never had me on the show. And I'm like, I didn't know you.
Well, I'm even more offended now because you should have known me.
I didn't say I didn't know who you were. I said I didn't know you.
Do you know the closest I got, the true story, I don't know if Kelsey can find it. I was on Ready Steady Cook, and I was in the...
With Peter Everett?
No, it was the comedian Colin Lane.
I was the revised version.
Colin Lane, and I was one of the celebrity people that was called out of the audience, and my friend Simon was the other one. So that's the closest I was in the studio with the mirrors either side, very small studio audience, but it looked bigger because of the mirrors. And I was on Ready Steady Cook, and I got an apron. I can't find it. I bet you Kelsey stole it. Last thing, I am seriously concerned about the freedom of speech on free-to-air TV and radio because of these mad effing witches. Does that mean that anyone with an opinion or an act or a shtick that these people don't like, could it well be cancelled?
Yeah, possibly. It's funny, I am in negotiations to try and get the founder of the Mad Witches on McKnight Tonight on Monday. I don't know whether that will end up happening, but I hope so, because I want to have a genuine discussion with them. They hold a lot of power at the moment. The networks, are very frightened of them. They've been very smart. You look at what they've done in their targeting. So they don't just protest, they target advertisers. It's a really smart play. Whether you agree with their politics or not, the way they have turned themselves into a force has been impressive. And you cannot dispute they had an impact on what happened with Carl and Jackie O and with Carl. Nine really worried when they talked about targeting the Today Show and its revenues.
Yep,
because
I bet.
Once upon a time you could withstand a bit of activism. You cannot now. And so they hold a lot of power. So I would like to know how they decide who they're going to target. What are the boundaries? You know, what are their thoughts on free speech? I would really like to have that conversation, because is it a case of just not agreeing with someone's politics, or is it because when they think someone goes too far by being misogynistic or platforming to people that are too far right? I'd really like to know what their goals are.
And Rob, who can ever forget? This is something that's stuck with me. Harry Connick Jr. was in the country, and he was a guest judge on Red Faces. And three guys came out in blackface and did an act. And everyone's laughing, Blackman's cracking jokes, and Harry Connick Jr. was horrified. Harry Connick Jr., jazz musician, born and raised in New Orleans, surrounded by brilliant black jazz musicians. And he was so offended. Do you remember that?
Oh, how could you not? You know, the thing that got me at the time was that I think there was a naivety in Australia when it came to blackface. We didn't understand the historical implications. Now, Harry Connick Jr. did because he's American. If he hadn't said anything, the show would have just gone on and it wouldn't have been a controversy. But I also think it was a moment where we grew up as a nation and learnt something because it just wasn't my perception, and I just thought that it was a trope. I didn't realise the offence that something like that caused.
So how do acts like Al Jolson go down in America now?
They don't.
It's cancelled. It's gone.
Pretty much. There are still people who love him and respect him, and he was a brilliant performer, but it is a reminder of bad times for Black Americans. Unfortunately, we in Australia just didn't get the memo. And I'm not saying absolutely everyone, but I think as a general population, this is before the internet. This is before we were so heavily influenced by American culture. I just don't think we knew. And I don't think Daryl or the producers were out to cause offence to anyone.
No.
They were just literally, from their point of view, this is an act that went down really well back in the old show days. We're getting them back for the reunion. I don't think there was any ill intention behind it, but we learnt a lesson.
We really did. It just stuck in my mind. Rob McKnight. There goes McKnight tonight. Rob, always good to see you, buddy. I'm going to get you back on, but we'll talk more about your career and why the hell you didn't get Luke Bona on Studio 10, a travesty in television history. It would have made that
list.
If
I could turn back time.
Yeah, there you are, sitting on a gun on a ship like Cher. God, strike me pink.
And all I'm missing is my boner.
There are pills that can bring it back.
Welcome to a show called The Man Cave. Man Cave! With Bona on the mic, it's a good day. Good day! Adam McDonald and Kelsey too. Thomas behind the scenes, producing all the good.
So, Brother Adam, Vice Captain.
Yes.
You know how we're always looking for people that will fit the mould of the Man Cave, and it's not everyone that can do it, correct?
That's correct. We've had some doozies.
Who was our biggest flop?
Oh, I'm going to plead the fifth on that one, Lukey. That might be still listening.
Yeah, because we might get desperate and need them back one day.
Exactly.
Pat Conaghan was recommended to me by our good mate, David Littleproud, who was head of the Nationals, leader of the Nationals, and now I think he's enjoying life more. He's got certainly more to say when he comes on the podcast than he did when he had the weight of leadership on his shoulders. But he said, I've got to tell you something. He's a colleague of mine. Yes, he's with the Nats, but he's a great bloke and he has a great story to tell. He's the member for Cowper, which is up in the North Coast. His name is Pat Conaghan, and he used to be a police officer. He's got a law background. He's a passionate politician and he loves his electorate and the folks that live in it, but he's got some really interesting stories. And I thought he might be a good candidate for the Man Cave. So, Vice Captain, we have with us the member for Cowper. Oh, hang on, wrong button. There it is. The Honourable Member for Cowper, Pat Conaghan, welcome to the Man Cave.
Good morning, Solids. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you on board, Pat.
Yeah, it really is great to have you on board. I don't want this to be about politics, but Vice Captain, I've got to say this. The Honourable Member for Cowper looks very fresh and bushy-tailed after the winter ball in Canberra last night. Now, I want to know, Pat, did you go?
No.
And if you did, you are sponsored by Barocca or something. What's going on?
Yeah, look, I've been there, done that. I've been a couple of times, but I'll leave that to the younger generation now, mate. I've got my tux put away for a long time, but I'm sure they all had a good time. I saw the papers this morning. Everyone was frocked up and looking good. No, I was tucked into bed by about 10 o'clock.
Do those balls get rowdy?
I beg your pardon? I beg your pardon? Oh, what?
Sorry, those events.
In Canberra, I'll tell you what, in Canberra they can get quite blue.
But do the politicians tie it on or like...
Yeah, look, they do. They get pretty loose. The grog flows and everyone's dancing by the end of the night. They're good nights and the whole point is that, the press and the police get together and be self-effacing and the PM gets up there and bags himself out. It'd be interesting to see what he said. I haven't seen it in the media, but they're generally good nights.
Okay, I've got some news for you. This is breaking news, okay, from the Bonafide podcast. You know how there are auctions which go to a very good cause?
Yes.
Included in the auctions, Vice Captain, was a game of tennis against the Prime Minister. Albo put up a game of tennis. You won't believe he won at 17.5K. It was that Joseph Daoud, who was the mortgage broker, and he made headlines because he recently spent nearly 20K on billboards campaigning against the Prime Minister's proposed ambition tax. That's going to be an interesting game of tennis, Pat.
Oh, wouldn't it?
I'd like to be on the sideline watching that one, because we know, and we're not going to get into politics, but the ambition tax is a shocker, and we've already seen the effects on the housing market. But yeah, it'd be interesting.
Okay, enough of politics. Enough about politics. Vice Captain, I know that you've got a lot you'd like to talk to Pat Conaghan about, but recently we saw the biggest cocaine bust in Australia's history, nearly 2.5 tons. It was found out at Richmond, Western Sydney. And Vice Captain, it's in a cargo container, a shipping container. That container is underground, but the cocaine was in another container under that. As I say, a massive Australian record for cocaine, millions and millions of dollars worth on the street. And I was talking to David Littleproud about it, and I said, how does ASIO or the police, and how do they get together the intelligence? It must take a hell of a long time to work out who's behind it, where it's going to be, make the right arrests, intercepting the right phone calls and text messages. He said, you need to talk to the member for Cowper, Pat Conaghan. And so that kind of was why we got you on, Pat. So, Vice Captain, I know you've got questions. Because, Pat, you were a police officer and an undercover police officer.
I was in the Drug Enforcement Agency, but a specialised unit called the Undercover Unit. So I was an undercover operative full-time, where what you see on TV is actually correct when you see those movies and those series, because quite often the people who produce it are people who've had involvement in being undercover operatives or supervisors. So I had 2 years full-time as a UC, and I looked very, very different to what I look like now. I had hair down to my bum and earrings and, a different persona, assumed names and different identity. And the whole gig was to infiltrate serious crime organisations, not just street level, but serious crime, and through the use of informants to actually infiltrate them and bust them.
I find it interesting that, like, when you go, all right, I'm going to go undercover to try and bust this organised crime gang, like, how do you get your foot in the door? You can't just lob up and say, yes, I'm a criminal, can I get involved?
Yeah,
look, so almost all the time there's somebody who's been busted previously and is doing a deal with the cops. So they become a registered informant. You spend time with them to get to know them, and they get to know you. Start hanging around them, have a backstory, and then all of a sudden you're meeting the main player. It takes time to build up that relationship. The longest job I had, and you do multiple jobs at any one time, so you've got to remember, you've got to have a very good memory of who you are, what your persona is. But the longest job I had was over a period of 18 months. And the shortest was around 3 months. But you have to build that confidence in the crook and the organisation to actually get there.
That in itself must be hard, because this guy's a crook. He's already turning on his mates and his gang, and now you're putting all your faith into him.
Yeah. Well, the first rule is that you never trust them, ever. Yeah. Look, some of them are quite likeable. Some of the informants that I work with, that if you were in the pub, you'd say, oh, yeah, he's a good bloke. At the end of the day, you were using them as a tool to get what you wanted and where you needed to go. Very, very dangerous for the informants, of course. Yeah. And I actually had a couple that I used for operations that in later years wound up dead.
What happened? Right. What happened?
One was murdered. No one ever found out who killed him, but I've got a fair idea. And the other one was found dead of an OD from heroin, and didn't really have a history of heroin use, had a history of drug use. But that was quite sus.
Tell me, is it true? And David Littleproud told me this story, so, take it with a grain. David said, ask him about the time you were on an undercover sting and somebody you went to school with recognised you and nearly blew it. What happened? Tell us all about that.
Look, I was meeting with some actually Romanians in the eastern suburbs. We were there in a pub. Everything was good. I had a good rapport with these guys. It was about the 4th or 5th time I'd met them. I saw out of the corner of my eye this bloke, and I knew him instantly, and it was a bloke that I went to school with. He's seen me, and fortunately he was pissed. He'd had quite a bit to drink,
And he's come up and he's going, Pat. And I'm going, mate, you got me mixed up with someone else. He goes, you are the spitting image of a bloke I went to school with. I said, no, mate, I'm just having a drink with my mates. So go off and have another drink. So he goes off and then he comes back. He goes, no, it's got to be you. It's got to be you. Going, mate, you're starting to annoy me. Just go away. I'm just having a drink. And he kept on going. So I ended up belting him. Anyway, so he learned his lesson and he went away. And
you dropped him.
Yeah. Well, I had to do something because he kept on going and going and going. At one point, he actually dropped my surname. And
no.
So fortunately, the Romanians, they first language, they didn't quite pick up on it. Anyway, this bloke left me alone. It got really awkward and quiet. The main bloke, he looked at me and he goes, you know what? That always happens to me too.
That's like
I was just going, thank God. Yeah, I needed to change my undies after that one.
That's like a movie script. Isn't it? Like you would have seen that on a movie where someone gets ping-bean undercover.
Look, people keep telling me to write a book. I've got 1,000 stories. I did tell Luke I caused an international incident on one occasion.
Start from the beginning.
Let's go.
Okay, so it was the buy bust day. So you build up and build up. You buy small samples, you buy bigger samples, and then you go in for the kill, and that's called the buy bust day, and you have a whole team around you, and what you see on the movies in the vans, and they pour out of the back of the van.
Yeah.
So I was buying 2 kilos of amphetamines on this day, and it was the middle of summer. Again, funnily enough, it was the eastern suburbs.
Surprise.
Yeah. Anyway, so I was walking to go into the house where this guy was, and I had all the money on me. As I walked along, opposite the house, there was a phone booth, and there was a Asian girl, a Japanese girl in the phone booth. It just struck me as I thought she was being a cockatoo. I thought she was looking out for cops and etc. So I went into the house. There was always a code 3 line, so I'm wired up. They can hear me outside. I'm wearing a listening device. And the code was, we should go and get a feed after this. Once you sighted the gear, once you sighted the 2 kilos. So I say, that's great. There's the money. We should go and get a feed after this. At that point, police come out of nowhere. As I'm walking out with the gear and they're running in, one of my colleagues, a detective name's Jenny, has said to Jenny, get the girl in the phone booth. She's still there. And I'd been inside for a good, half hour doing the deal. Jenny is 6'1", old school detective.
Yeah.
She races over and grabs this young Japanese girl.
Yeah.
Who fights like a wildcat.
Yeah.
Jenny's got her, thrown her onto the bonnet of the car.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, had been running all the time that I was inside, and it was the middle of summer, so it was boiling hot. Puts her on the car, pushes her face in, gets the handcuffs on her, throws her in the back and takes her down to the Surrey Hills Police Station. I get a phone call about an hour later saying, Jake, that was my undercover name, Jake, why did you tell me to grab this girl? And I said, she'd been there for such a long time. I thought she was a cockatoo. She was a Japanese exchange student who had been here for a day and was on the phone to her father, who was a high-ranking government official in Japan.
Oh, no.
Well, that's exactly what everybody did. So all hell broke loose. The following couple of days, we were summoned to the Japanese consulate.
I bet you were.
Where, and by the way, Jen wasn't very happy with me.
No.
Where we had to make an apology and face the wrath of the Japanese consulate and this young girl. So myself, Jen, and our boss, we all went down there. As soon as we walked in, the whole mood changed because our boss was Mick Drury.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So Mick Drury was the UC that got shot by Chris Flannery.
Chris Flannery at his home in Chatswood.
Yeah. They've all gone, he's a celebrity. So we were getting photos and he was signing autographs and the whole mood changed. And I thank God that Mick was the boss at the time because it could have been very ugly.
Mick Drury, an absolute hero. Of course, it was Roger Rogerson that brought him down, and Rentakill, who just disappeared. Chris Flannery. Did you ever meet Roger Rogerson?
Yeah, I did.
Tell us about Roger the Dodger, arguably the most corrupt copper in the history of New South Wales Police.
Of the world.
Well, he was. Everybody knew it. It was no secret. I only met him after he left. And funnily enough, it was to try and sort out a dispute between two other crooks. He was an interesting cat. You'd shake his hand and then you'd have to check your hand.
Make sure your fingers were there.
I think it's interesting, someone like Roger, like traditionally through the 70s and 80s, police were big humans. But Roger wasn't. He was like a demure little fellow, but he wielded so much power and influence. It's unbelievable. Like my knowledge of Australian crime through that period is unsurpassed. Like I've read everything. And I just find it fascinating that he wasn't a big man, he wasn't a strong man, but he was so conniving and clever, he got to get away with what he got away with.
Absolutely. And he had a presence about him, and he would just intimidate his way through everything. And everybody feared him. Certainly in the 70s and 80s, he was loved because he had control of King's Cross and all the underworld identities. But obviously fell out of favour, and now he's dead. Definitely the most corrupt police officer that I came across. I came on the tail end of the old school way of policing. I saw a lot of it, but I know now it's a completely different police force, and I'm actually very good friends with Mal Lanyon, who's the commissioner.
Because the armed hold-up squad, and I'm talking about Roger Rogerson, and I kind of get, Vice Captain, I kind of get the philosophy that if you're going to understand the criminal world, you've got to be a bit of a criminal yourself to relate to them. And I'm talking about Nettie Smith, who was unbelievable. But the corruption was everywhere, and went back to Roger Rogerson. Why weren't there more whistleblowers? Were people just scared shitless of the power and they weren't aware of how high up his tentacles went? To explain that.
Everybody knew, but it was the culture back then. You know, the culture, if you were a whistleblower, you were a dog, you were then ostracised. And there was a line of thought that everybody knew that the squads were doing the wrong thing, that they were corrupt, but they had control over what was actually happening in the underworld and understood and knew and almost directed it. And it was almost like, all right, well, we're controlling it even though we're being corrupt, but the general public is safe. As opposed to what we're seeing now is shootings in the streets, Lakemba, Bankstown. The police don't have control over any of it.
It was like there was almost that was your job. Like I'm a bank robber, and these dudes had pride in what they did, and they were good at it. And that whole to and fro between the, excuse the pun, the cops and robbers. I thought it was a fascinating time, like reading stories about the crews that used to run around Erskineville being bank robbers, and because Erskineville is such a rabbit warren, they just knew the whole place like the back of their hand. It was just they put a lot of work into their vocation, for lack of a better word.
They did, and there was a respect between the police and the crooks, and there were rules, and everybody abided by those rules.
But there was also a philosophy, Vice Captain, you're more up on this than me, but I guess the Roger Rogersons and the coppers were interested in the crims and went underground and lived with them to understand them, and they used them as informants and whatever. But innocent people were okay. It was only the crooks that were unsafe. Case in point, Warren Lamfranchi, who was a drug dealer, shot in Dangar Place. And it's amazing it's Surrey Hills, and it's amazing how many people still line up for selfies at Dangar Place. But Sally Ann Huckstep goes on Ray Martin on 60 Minutes and blows the whole thing. She's then found in Centennial Park in a pond. Everyone knew Roger was behind it, and eventually Nettie Smith apparently admitted to it, choked her. He enjoyed doing it, but it kind of stopped. What happened? I mean, she was portrayed as a lying prostitute, a drug addict. Warren Lamfranchi was a scum of the earth, but she was drowned under the command of Roger Rogerson.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many little intricate stories through that whole period. But I think it sort of started to change with the criminals coming out of Melbourne, and they did the Russell Street bombing, and that was just two innocent constables just checking out a parked car in the middle of the street. I think that's when it changed.
Oh, well, the Hilton bombing. Remember, we had the Hilton bombing
yeah,
in Sydney. Yeah, the Amanda Marga sect was anyway. I'm going back. I remember that very, very well. But the tribal warfare almost of the criminality that goes on in Melbourne and Sydney, and you think even about the Father's Day massacre at Milperra, which was, it brought that underworld to our TVs straight away, didn't it, Pat?
It did. And funnily enough, a fellow by the name of Guy Walding, he was a UC before me. He was one of the main producers of that. And it was very, very accurate. He was heavily involved when he was a UC in that whole scene. I think it's why it was so popular. The average Australian doesn't get to see that, doesn't get to understand that. And looking back on the two, you could only do 2 years as a UC because of the psychological damage. And I'll be completely open here, drug use, because you couldn't be a UC and go in and buy,
You had to use. So you had to use drugs to keep your cover?
Yeah.
What sort of drugs were you taking?
Probably easier to say what sort of drugs wasn't I using.
No, seriously.
Well, you can't sit there and say I'm going to buy, a kilo of coke or a 600-gram block or brick as they came through China. Sit there and say, sorry, I don't use it, I just sell it. Or sit there and you're buying 100 kilos of dope and someone says, here's a joint. No, sorry, my body is a temple. It's never going to wash. A statute of limitations on drug use, 6 months, so I'm happy to talk about it. I won't get myself into trouble. But it's just for somebody to say it never happened. And I saw some of my colleagues actually significantly affected afterwards, having drug addictions. And there's stories of former UCs ending up in jail for drug supply, gun supply, because because you're in it 24/7, you do actually start believing that your assumed persona is you.
That's your life, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's no duty of care. I mean, you're instructed, you were instructed to take drugs.
The line was, you do not take drugs. But everybody there knew that was just not possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was no duty of care back then. And since those former UCs have been charged and gone to jail, and most of the colleagues that I work with are now out of the job on pensions for psychological damage, etc. But they changed the system, and the system is completely different now. I used to go to work. We worked out of the factory. You'd be given your sustenance for the day. It was about $50, which is not bad for back then. You go to the pub, or then you go and meet your target, or if you weren't working your job that day, you'd sort of go out and get intel of other things, and it was just free reign, just absolute free reign.
Were you married and have a family at the time?
No. I was,
right, because that'd be very hard.
Oh, wouldn't it? It's a single man's life. That
and the people who were married ended up divorced. I was only the 2 years I was 24 to 26, so I was single. Didn't see my family for 2 years. Didn't want to contact them. You just lived that life. And funnily enough, by the time at the end of the 2 years, I absolutely hated police in general because of a couple of incidents where, I got cheeky with the cops who had pulled me up. They were old school, gave me a bit of a touch up. Another time where I was in a cell doing another job, same sort of thing. But I just had I had a dislike of police because I started believing the bullshit.
Wow. And Vice Captain, listen to this. You actually had a contract on your life taken out.
I did.
Tell us about that.
And this goes back to the old school rules. I was buying, this was in Newcastle, I was buying 18 ounces of amphetamine. And this had taken a good while to build trust up with this particular target. He was a monster and he was scary. He was really, really loose. It's the only time in 2 years that I was actually afraid of a target. He just so happened to be the son of the sergeant of arms of one of the motorcycle gangs up there. I did the job. He was arrested. in fact, when he was arrested, he was sitting in a car. It took 6 or 8 of the SPG to actually get him on the ground. And as he was being dragged out of the car, he actually pulled the knife out. I was in the passenger seat. I was getting dragged out that side. He pulled a knife out and swung it to my seat, thinking that I had put him in. He thought that I was an informant. So he gets locked up, and we had telephone intercepts still running. And a couple of days later, there's a call made that the word go out that a contract on Jake for 50 grand. Fortunately, the listening post was still operating. As soon as they heard that, my boss went out to see the father of this bloke and said, righto, this bloke's an undercover operative. He's not an informant. You do not touch one of ours. So I had to disappear for a few weeks while the word got out that the contract was no longer in force. So, that was an interesting time.
And that sergeant of arms, he would have been old school and said, fair. Let's quash it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because if they had continued on with that or something had happened to me, then they knew that 16,000 police would have been converging on their operations, which they don't need.
When somebody goes into protection, they've decided to become an informant, there's a court case coming up, you want to preserve their life because they're a key witness. How protected are you in protection? What happens?
Back then it was called WITSEC, Witness Security.
Witness Protection, that's what I meant, yeah.
I wouldn't do it. You're never that safe, and it's just not worth it. You can actually make quite a lot of money out of it, being an informant, depending on the haul they get. Particularly these days with the ability to track people with social media, with the whole works. You can change your name, change your identity, go and live in another country, you'll still get found.
Yeah.
It's a very dangerous industry to get into.
So you wouldn't do it? You wouldn't go into witness protection?
No, not at all. I wouldn't be an informant for all the money in the world. It's just not worth it. You're looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Wow. Who's the scariest individual you've ever seen face to face? And I don't want to play one-upmanship here, and I have led a very, very sheltered life compared to yours, Pat. But I met face to face Fred Manny in Bathurst, and that frightened I was looking at pure evil. And I met Graham Abbo Henry and interviewed him a long time ago. He was a character. But Fred Manny frightened the hell out of me. Who's up there with you?
It wasn't somebody that I knew in the police. It was actually somebody that I ended up representing.
As a lawyer?
As a lawyer. It was not somebody I wanted to represent. It's a horrible story. He partnered up. He was from Malawi. He partnered up with a woman from Malawi, but they were living on the up on the Central Coast. She had a 12-year-old daughter. He strapped her to the frame of a bed and beat her to death with one of the planks. And when I went and saw him for the first time, he was absolute pure evil. And he admitted it, and he had zero remorse, and he ended up getting 44 years. So he wanted nothing to do with me. He wanted nothing to do with the court process. He wrote a letter to the judge and said, I don't care what you do.
Pat, Adam, I know you're dying. Can I just ask one more question, Vice Captain? Pat, do you think some people can just not be rehabilitated? Are there some people who are just wired evil and that's it? Yep. For example, pedophiles. You cannot rehabilitate a pedophile. They're wired that way. They don't think they're doing anything wrong. What are your thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not shy in saying there's only one solution, and that's a bullet. I'll be criticised for saying that. They've got nothing to offer to society. We then have to house them, and then when they're released, monitor them. You can't rehabilitate these people. And they are pure evil. I should say, as a lawyer, I made a decision never to take on child sexual assault or child exploitation material brief. I just said, I'm not doing it because I saw that in the cops. Out of all the things that I saw in the cops, I mean, I did some crazy, crazy stuff in the UCs, but the only thing that affected me was child exploitation material and child sexual assault. That's, those images, once you see it, you can't be unseen. And it's no wonder why these police officers working in the, sex crimes or child sexual assault, it's no wonder they go mad. These people are just pure evil and should be eradicated. You can't help them.
Vice Captain, you take over.
I agree. I don't think there's any rehabilitation. It's wide in there. I'm shoulder to shoulder with you there, Pat. Tell me this: what do you reckon? What do you reckon makes a good UC, and what do you reckon would break someone if they didn't have it as an undercover?
A good UC, you can talk to anyone. You can adapt to your environment like that. And I grew up in a place, Kempsey on the mid-north coast. It's in the 70s and 80s. A great town, but it was rough. Quite often you'd have to try and talk yourself out of situations so you didn't, get a flogging by somebody 5 years older than you. I think the ability just to talk to anyone about anything. I found out the secret early when dealing with high-value targets, and that is to make them think that they are better than you. If I'd go into a situation, they'd be talking about things that I don't know. I'd say, oh, mate, I don't know how you could do that. I could never do that. That's just incredible, So you put them on a pedestal and they would think, oh, this bloke's all right. They wouldn't know that I'm complimenting them to make them feel at ease with me. That works 9 times out of 10. Look, and there were a couple of occasions where people just looked at me and just went, nah, there's something about you. They were switched on. So, we'd try and use a different UC or a different methodology, but I had a very high success rate.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
Vice Captain, it's another world, isn't it?
Absolutely. Just to be getting up in the morning and I'm going into this lair as someone I'm not really to try and bust these people. It'd be like shitting your pants every day.
You'd have to be on drugs.
Yeah, look, you really had to rely on your gut. I'll give you one very quick story. I was going to meet a couple of blokes on the northern beaches. It was a lunchtime meeting. I felt really uneasy about wearing a wire.
Yeah.
So I took it off. I put it on, and I'm pretty crude back then. It was like a cassette that you put in your sock, ran the wire up your leg, and tied the wires around your undies. I took it off, and I went down, and they said, we want you to come over the toilet block. And I said, what for? Said, well, we want to make sure you're not wearing a wire and that you're who you say you are.
Far out.
Well, I said, well, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you want me to strip off, then you strip off. So we've all gone into this bloody public toilet block and stripped off. And they were cool after that. And we ended up doing the buy-bust of a heap of cocaine the next week.
What would have happened? What would have happened if they'd found the wire, Pat?
Look, they probably would have flogged me. I don't know if they would have killed me. They were pretty basic drug dealers, but yeah, it wouldn't have been pretty.
Wow. No wonder you took the drugs. The coppers, because, okay, you weren't instructed to take drugs, but you had to do whatever it took, and taking drugs and becoming part of that criminal culture was part of your job. Did you get addicted? Did you struggle?
No, I didn't. And to be honest, and this is a hand on heart, the day I left had never taken drugs again. It was solely for the purpose of achieving that result. I know I've said that a lot of colleagues did become addicted and have sought help, and some of them, as I said, went to jail. But look, it's a completely different culture these days. I think they even make the UCs take drug tests, and they're monitored 24/7. But in my day, as I said, it was very, very loose.
Very different. Can I just ask you one last question? That's not a target over your right shoulder, is it? What's that? Oh, no. It's better than having one on your back.
Yeah, well, I thought long and hard about doing this podcast and being as honest as I have been, Luke, but it's been a very long time. A lot of water's gone under the bridge. The people have done their time. In fact, one guy that I did buy 100 kilos of hash off, that same detective actually, Jen, ran into him after he'd done his time. I think he did about 7 years, and he recognised her and said, "Tell Jake." He had 2 young kids. He said, "Tell Jake, thank you." He said, "I would have been dead by now."
There you go.
Yeah.
How many lives do you reckon you've saved?
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't know. I suppose that's a question. That's a question for the people who have come out the other side.
Well, it'd be hard because the amount of stuff of the shit you've taken off the street, the amount of shit that's been taken off the street, you couldn't count that. Like it could be millions. The amount of high-end heavy drug deals that you've saved.
Well, that's right. And You don't really think about that. You concentrate on the target and that operation at the time. But look, it was a great 2 years. I loved being in the cops. I was very fortunate that nothing happened to me, and might write a book one day.
Oh, you've got to write. They'll make a movie. They will make a movie on it. Don't you worry about that. Pat Conaghan, member for Cowper. I just want to segue into a bit of fun now. Adam, are you with me? Is your jaw on the ground?
Look, fascinating. I've lived a couple of different lives, but nothing at all like that.
It's unbelievable. Before Adam takes over, because there's another segment that I want to do with you right now, Pat. But what made you segue into politics? What did you think you had to offer, and have you delivered?
Look, I've always tried to be a community person. My old man, he was a doctor in Kempsey, which is a very small town back when he was practicing medicine. But he was always giving back to the community. I'm the youngest of five. We weren't rich. We didn't have a pool. We didn't go overseas every year. Well, we never went overseas. And I think that kind of led me into the police. When I was a lawyer, I used to do a lot of pro bono work for women's refuges. I felt that I could offer more as a parliamentarian. I've got to be honest, this gig is harder than being a UC.
Because you've got more red tape and more bureaucratic bullshit and public servants and a cabinet or a shadow cabinet, and then you've got to do deals with that mob up there, and if you want to get legislation through, you've got to do a deal with that mob that you fucking can't stand, and you go, oh, the end will justify the means, and I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere along the way you go, the means can get stuffed. I can't. I'm going nowhere.
Yeah, look, when I was a UC, I was only dealing with one ego.
Yeah.
You got hundreds down here. It is very, very difficult to get things done, particularly in opposition. I'm very proud of a few things I've done. I got funding in my first term for building a over 55s for women facing domestic violence. There's 23 units there, 26 units for down in Kempsey for mums and kids who are homeless because of domestic violence. There's a number of those kind of things that I've always said, if I leave my electorate, if I leave Cowper in a better shape than when I came in, then I've done my job.
That'll do me. Adam, I'll let you take over because we have a segment here on the Man Cave where we ask our special guests to think of something, a toy or a game or something they had when they were a kid and they wish they had it back in their man cave, or they oh God, I sold that or I lost it. I'd love to have it back.
I broke it, whatever.
Yeah, Adam, I'll let you take over.
So it's Stretch Armstrong, Pat.
Yeah, that's right. No, I still remember. I think I actually ripped one of his arms off. So I was 6 or 7 years old. So he wasn't as stretchy as I thought.
Well, these Stretch Armstrongs, they were pretty basic things. So Hasbro, who were the king of the toys at the time, they released all the Star Wars toys. So they were the world's biggest manufacturer of toys. So they released this Stretch Armstrong. It was just like this little muscly man. And it was just literally, it was a rubber outing filled with corn syrup. And that's all it was. It was such a basic thing. They cost brand new. I think they cost about $11, $10. And all you would do is just stretch his fucking arms and legs. And basically, it really didn't do anything. But I did a bit of research. And if you want to find one now, still in the packet, you're looking at around $1,400 to get one of these Stretch Armstrongs because just the nature of the toy, they were used. You stretched it, the dog got hold of one arm and you're pulling the other. And so that's what happened with all these early toys. They were made to be used and kids used them and loved them. So if you've got a spare $1,400, Pat, I could probably grab you one.
Yeah, great. I'll look you up.
Well, hang on. While we're here, Pat, you were, I'm just looking at your birth date on Wiki. So in 1978, you were 7. And 7 is, I remember when I was obsessed with toys, Batman, Superman, Captain Action, we've talked about, Gumby, Pokey. Adam, can you take us back to 1978? What were the hot toys in Australia on that year?
The hottest toys were Star Wars toys. Star Wars was still fresh in everyone's memory. It wasn't long out of the cinema. So Star Wars toys were always good. But there's these interesting ones that I find, and when I mention it, people go, oh, shit, I remember that. There was a little game called Simon, and it was like a little box, and it just had coloured lights on it. So to go red light, blue light. So you'd have to go red light, blue light, like Simon Says. And you had to copy the sequence and see how deep you'd get. And, some of these little brainiac kids could get a sequence of 30 or 40. Other kids, they'll get it set as a sequence of 6. So it's just all these sort of little games, these early games. But the main one is Star Wars. It's still shit hot today. As you know, Luke, I do not like Star Wars. I'm not a fan at all. But Star Wars was the king of the castle. And as I said, Hasbro was they would have made millions out of selling Star Wars figures.
What a year, 1978. I was in 4th form. Year 10.
1978, I was 2.
No, I wasn't. 1978, I was in year 11. I was in 5th form.
Yeah, I was 2. Yeah.
Pat Conaghan. It has been, Adam, what do you reckon? What an eye-opener. What a fantastic guest to have in the man cave.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You've been sensational. And thanks for doing all you do. Whatever side of politics you're on, put it aside. You're there for the right reason.
That's right.
You're there for the right reason. And can you tell Little Proud, thank you very much? You're going to see him today?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'll see him.
Well, don't forget to give me a rap, okay? Because he's coming on next week.
I'll do that, mate. He gave you a big rap, and look, I've enjoyed myself, fellas. It's been a great experience, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
Is there a message you'd like to finish on, Pat?
Look, when I do citizenship ceremonies, when people are signing up to become Australians, I ask them to do one thing, and that's to give back. Give back to your community. There's too many people out there just taking, and I think our society's worse off for it. So, if you go and volunteer with the SES or sign up to be a Lifeline counsellor, it doesn't have to be a lot of hours, but just give back to our Australian way.
Well said. Well said.
Pat Conaghan, member for Cowper. What an interesting onion we just peeled there, Vice Captain.
Oh, absolutely. Look, and I think that is the tip of the iceberg of those stories, so you will get a rerun, Pat. Make no mistake.
Yes. Okay, there will be a sequel, okay? You promise?
I'd love to.
Yeah, awesome.
Pat Conaghan. Well, thank you so much for listening, Kelsey. I hope you deleted...
Oh, Luke!
Oh, what is she doing? She's running out. She's struggling with the door. I'll call this. Kelsey's up and out of her seat. She's racing to the back of the office. She's struggled to open the door. She's turned left. What is she up to? She's very much the girl in form, has been very, very quick on her feet lately. And let's time her. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Look at that, right on cue. And I think I know what she's got. She's got some merchandise in her hands. There's a coffee cup. Rob McKnight wants one. Can you get one to Rob McKnight? Okay, unwrap it. What have you got? A Bonafide cap. Yes. She loves opening shit. And a Bonafide hoodie. Look at that. That is unbelievable. It's arrived. So that's a sample of the merch. She's got one more. And what's that? A T-shirt. And what's on the back? Show the back. Turn it round.
And then I forgot to bring in here.
Wake up with the boner.
Beanie.
And a beanie, a boner beanie. There you are, folks. There's some of the merchandise. Please get to the merch store and you can own some too. We'll give some away over the next 12 months and we'll see you at the Casino Truck Show, which we're really looking forward to.
Yes, we will be up there, Luke. The Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday, we will be up in Casino.
And we want to meet you all.
Yes,
so
we'll be doing, you and Rod are doing a live podcast from the show.
So that's the Casino Truck Show, which is coming up at the end of this month. Looking forward to that. We're not driving, are we? I haven't got to put up with you in an electric cone vehicle again.
How far away is
it's a long
Casino
way
from here?
I think you got to fly to Ballina and then rent a car.
Adventure time.
God. Folks, thank you so much for listening to episode 100 and whatever it is.
21
of the Bonafide podcast. It's been a lot of fun. It's an interesting little bit of trivia for you, Kelsey. Did you know that Neil Diamond's real name was Neil Cole?
No.
Yeah, but then the pressure got to him.
Ha, ha, ha. So good. Did you know that if you put coal and peanut butter, you can make a diamond?
Your mother is so tight, she could eat a lump of coal and shit a diamond.
Goodbye.
Your mother once accidentally swallowed a 20-cent piece. She held onto it for 6 months and only 5 cents came out.
Goodbye.